priority is the health and well-being and the lives of the American people.
We want to make sure that we are continuing to support our hospitals.
We've unleashed our most potent weapon of all, the courage of the American people.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Another huge spending bill moves toward approval this week. State attorneys general move to protect the less fortunate, and oil plummets to levels not seen in a generation or more. From New York, welcome to the second hour of Bloomberg Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. Equity markets are down today overall, although maybe not for tech, as the price of oil collapses. Concerns about the spread of the coronavirus continue, and earnings season ramps up. We welcome now Bloomberg MLive blog cross-asset reporter Kriti Gupta. So, Kriti, we normally start with equities. I'm not going to do that today. We got to start with oil. My goodness gracious.
That's right. You are seeing WTI futures drop to as low as $4.74. That's the last price that I'm seeing here. What's insane is that we started off trading this week in Asia being like, oh, well, it's dropping down below 20, and now we've come down to a 474 handle. Now I'm looking at the screen, 5.19 is the price on a barrel of WTI crude, bringing a lot of questions into what does negative oil prices really look like. It looks like that seems like the next kind of hurdle we have to get to here.
Well, didn't I see the CMA say that they may have futures contracts trade negative?
You did, and shout out to Alex Longley over on our oil team breaking that news. It's interesting because there is actually precedent for this. Oil prices can trade the way the natural gas prices did. There were about 2 weeks last year where you saw natural gas prices trade in negative territory because there was this kind of oversupply in natural gas, because pipelines weren't able to just transport it just because there was just so much supply in our hands. That sounds a lot like what we're dealing with now with the oversupply of oil right now, and storage just being such a major issue. Essentially, I just kind of want to make this point. What does negative oil prices really mean for the producers in the ground? It means that they stop producing. It means that oil does not come out of the ground. The pumps stop drilling. Everything just comes to a halt. That's kind of what the real life implications of this would be.
Extraordinary. What about the futures contracts going out? What does it tell us about what the market expects, next month, the month after that, the month after that?
That's right. So you are actually, I'm just going to look up really quickly, the second contract, which is our second month contract. So remember, a lot of this volatility coming off here is because we are on the day before the contract expires. The contract expires tomorrow, so you do see kind of this rollover selling. There will always be kind of that selling. So there's that rollover component to it. There is also kind of how ETFs are playing into this, how they're affecting the underlying asset. Put all of that aside, though, this is still a demand story. So this whole kind of idea is even with those production cuts, storage is still the major issue. You're actually seeing some parts of the country, some of those kind of more local producers. Remember, WTI futures is a global benchmark. So you actually see crude contracts for like Texas oil, for example, or Wyoming oil. You're seeing some of those already negative where they're actually having to pay storage places to hold their oil. So in some places that has already kind of gone negative.
To what extent is this very specifically a U.S. issue? That is to say, what's the spread with Brent?
That's right. So you're actually seeing this spread with Brent widen quite a bit. Now, what's interesting here is we were actually concerned that WTI would come at a premium to Brent just a few months ago. And I remember that because I wrote that story. It was a very kind of scary thing because it was like the one thing going for shale wouldn't be going for shale anymore. The fact that it's cheaper coming at a discount to Brent. You're also seeing Brent trade above the $20 handle. That's a good sign. It's kind of crazy to be saying that, but it is. You are actually seeing it not hit as badly as shale. And the reason for that is because you're actually going to see when these kind of production cuts are made, for example, from Russia, if hypothetically they were to make another one. There was a headline circulating from Reuters out this morning that they might consider making more cuts. Nothing confirmed yet. But there is kind of this idea that would impact Brent first. So there is almost that cushion that you have for Brent trading as opposed to WTI. That is strictly an American storage story. Even kind of those rumors of where, okay, well, what if you put this oil in a ship, put the ship out in the ocean and just let it sit there? It still wouldn't be enough to offset the supply. And that's how bad the situation here is compared to the demand story. Okay,
Kriti, we've waited long enough. Let's talk about equities now. Because last time I checked, it was sort of a tale of two stories, right? I mean, on the one hand, you had the Dow down signaling, but NASDAQ was trading up.
That's right. You are seeing the Nasdaq now in negative territory, down 0.1% here. The S&P, in contrast, down 0.7%. Now, this is kind of not a very huge volatile swing that we were expecting to see. You saw futures really kind of take a hit pre-market because of this oil story. Of course, you saw the Nasdaq really separate from the Dow and the S&P once again because of those tech heavyweights. That is kind of functioning as a safe haven for a lot of global investors. Now, why is that? Because they're large multinational corporations that don't depend on capital expenditures. They don't have to really, buy more drilling products, buy more equipment. These are kind of growth stock ideas, and that's why you're actually seeing kind of a move into them, not just today, but in the past few weeks. You've really seen tech as a safe haven, but now, of course, NASDAQ back in the red. But it tells you really just kind of where people are allocating their money, right? We're still not in the all clear, but tech is still golden at the moment.
So let me ask you the unfair question, but you know a lot more about it than I do. Are investors right now trading equities based on prospective earnings, or are they trading it based on what they think the Fed's going to do?
I'm going to say neither. I think it's a lot of technical trading right now.
Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think there is going to be a ton of kind of fundamental analysis here, because a lot of what we know, what we're going to learn from earnings, we already kind of know. We already know that the economy is shut down. We don't know when it's going to come up. We also know that earnings are going to be pretty weak compared to what we expected them to be. A lot of companies have already slashed their earnings. Halliburton, for example, came out this morning, said that it was cutting its capital expenditures. Of course, on this oil story, we kind of already knew that was going to happen. We saw Occidental do it last week. So you're going to see a lot of those kind of stories come out, regardless of what sector you're looking at. IBM, Coca-Cola, Netflix, those earnings are all coming out too. So I think right now, and for terms of intraday trading, you're really trying to find those levels. You're trying to find kind of past lows, past highs, really arbitrage opportunities to kind of make a profit here.
Okay, thank you so much, Kriti. Always a joy to have you with us. That's Kriti Gupta from Bloomberg. Coming up next, we're going to talk about that yet another huge spending bill coming out of Congress that they're talking about maybe this week. We're going to talk about it with Bloomberg congressional reporter Billy House. It appears that they have reached a compromise, the Democrats and the Republicans. They're going to go forward with more money for small businesses, more money for hospitals, more money for testing, but leave to another day assistance to the states and the local governments, despite the fact that the governor's been saying they need it rather desperately. So that's next, coming up with Billy House. This is Balance Power on Bloomberg Radio.
What began in China has expanded worldwide.
Is it China that's going to lead that consumer recovery?
What have we learned?
I'm curious as to what you're monitoring most closely in the news flow.
What can we predict?
Are you seeing a time when you can expect recovery in global travel?
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
If people realize that those numbers are going to get a lot worse.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association. And
did you know that players of People's Postcode Lottery have raised over £500 million for charities and good causes? They've also won 4 £47 million in prizes so far this year. And it could be your postcode next. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 23rd of April to play in the May draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus, conditions apply, play responsibly.
When we're stuck indoors all day, we might find our energy bills creeping up uninvited. The cheeky rascals. And none of us need that right now. But by simply switching your energy with Money Supermarket, you could save £280 on your bills. It's just one small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip number 5, cooking something. We all get stuck in a culinary rut with our normal routine. Shake things up in the kitchen by trying an ambitious new recipe or an over-the-top dessert. If cooking really isn't your thing, you can always support your local restaurants by ordering out. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen from Home on TuneIn.
Hit the court anytime with these great NBA podcasts on TuneIn. The Low Post.
So what struck you about this potential head-to-head matchup? What did we learn now that Zion is involved and LeBron and Zion go at each other for the first time?
You know, I still think both teams have to figure out kind of who are their guys when they get into a fourth quarter. I think you saw that with both of them. There were some kind of odd moments.
The Ringer NBA Show.
Who ended up winning the thing. But I did watch for a little bit when it was DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine playing against each other. And then as the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Haber Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in a front office, and when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I jumped high school here in New York
Find these and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
The NFL Draft is on TuneIn.
Starting Thursday, April 23rd, ESPN Radio has you covered with live coverage, discussions, and analysis of every round.
Be there when the future stars of the NFL find their home.
And your team selects the players that will shape their future for seasons to come. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Palapadown. The S&P and NASDAQ all retreating. Stocks are falling from a 6-week high, with investors on edge as oil plunges to unprecedented levels, and a spate of corporate earnings are on tap. Oil now below $5 a barrel. Talking about West Texas Intermediate crude as the coronavirus pandemic ravages global economies, threatening to erase an entire decade of demand growth. slashing thousands of jobs and wiping out hundreds of billions of dollars from company valuations. West Texas Intermediate crude now at $4.43 a barrel, down 75%. Gold is up 6 cents of 1%, $16.93 the ounce. The 10-year up 2/32, 0.63%. S&P down 22, a drop of 0.8%. The Dow down 302, down 1.2%. Nasdaq down 5 points now. That is a drop of 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. Well, Democrats and Republicans negotiated through the weekend to come up with a new spending bill, one that would specifically address the need for more money for small businesses, as well as address hospitals and testing as well, perhaps. We welcome now Billy House, he's Bloomberg congressional reporter, to give us the latest on where we think this potential bill is. So, Billy, thanks for being with us. What do we know about it?
Well, we headed into this morning thinking that they were nearing a finalized agreement that could be voted on in the Senate, perhaps even as early as today, and by the House Wednesday. But like any shakedown and cruise on a weekend deal, problems have emerged with questions about its funding for how that state funds for hospitals would be distributed, and other issues that progressives on the House side are raising. So as we stand now, no Senate vote likely today. They're still pressing the hope to get an agreement, but there are rumblings within both chambers that rank and file members don't like details.
So it's interesting, but they have sort of foregone, as it were, the state and local support for now. Is that correct? Because that was one of the issues.
That is. The larger piece, state and local governments and localities aspect was that the House Democrats and Schumer and his Democrats in the Senate were pushing for was something that was bargained away. But there is a local hospital aspect, $75 billion worth, and the distribution formula for that is one of the issues that they're haggling over right now.
Well, you mentioned that, Billy. So just if you can lay out what that issue is on the distribution, is it a matter of state versus private hospitals?
We're not quite sure because progressives have a more regional complaint about it. So it may not be just a private versus public. It could also be the regional way it's broken down or by populations.
There were also issues, as I understand, about how the money was going to some of the small and medium enterprises, whether it was getting the ones that really needed it. I know some Democrats wanted to tweak that or change it. Do we know about what they're doing that in this bill?
It is believed that the pressure put on by Pelosi and Democrats for some of that to formulaic aspect be done to drive into those smaller businesses that don't have long-standing relationships with banks, even Indian country. That some of that has been morphed into this tentative deal as the Democrats wanted. But again, nothing is finalized until everything is.
Of course. And who would be doing the finalizing? It sounded over the weekend like it was really the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, with Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, and perhaps some other leadership up on the Hill.
That's absolutely true. There seem to be no, at least outward negotiations between Senate Majority Leader McConnell and Republicans with the Democrats. It seemed to all be these meetings between Schumer staffers and Pelosi staffers with the Treasury Secretary, perhaps an indication of that relations aren't all that great across the aisle.
So Billy, give us a sense of the mechanics of this, because Congress is not in session. I mean, people are home sheltering like the rest of us are for the most part, as I understand it. So if, in fact, they do get a bill, how do they vote on it?
Well, heading into this morning, again, the idea was that the Senate, it'd be packaged, that the Senate would approve basically through a unanimous consent. Of course, that would require not one single senator objecting, and that's always a big if. But that was seen as going through, and then the House members actually, at least a quorum number of them, would arrive in Washington tomorrow for a vote Wednesday. All that is now up in the air. An interesting thing, though, is if House members are going to be in town Wednesday to vote on this, they could also be voting on a temporary resolution to allow temporary voting by proxy voting in future matters. So that's up there, something to be considered this week, too.
Well, I was going to ask about that because I heard over the weekend Speaker Pelosi talk about that, saying that she really wanted bipartisan support because that would be a rules change to allow for proxy voting. Are there real prospects of that at this point?
I think if it's kept on a temporary basis, here's the deal. Pelosi doesn't really want any kind of change in voting. She wants to keep control of members, and you do that with them actually being in Washington. She has four-cornered stalled this whole idea of remote voting for over 2 months now. And so now she's kind of given in, but the truth is the House isn't supposed to be back after this week till sometime after May 4th. By then, members might be coming back. So, I mean, she's really not giving away much. Now, yeah, she said she wants to talk to McCarthy, and McCarthy has been kind of hemming and hawing on the Republican side whether he'd go along with it. So we assume he would. But again, this isn't a real change. It's a temporary change at best.
And Billy, finally, come back to the state support, because we just had in the first hour of Balance of Power, we had Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey about his proposal. He came out with Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana today for $500 billion for the states that would be delivered in 3 tranches, one based on population, one based on the extent of the disease by state, and the other by economic damage. Any prospect of that?
Well, I think so. I mean, again, a lot of this is the next bill, which may not occur till May. And again, like anything, it's being seen as the last ship out of the port. And so everybody wants to throw everything into that. But I think that particular idea is gaining popularity. Even in its early stages, it seems to have gotten a pretty good reception.
And maybe the states could tide themselves over, some of the ones that are in real trouble, by borrowing from the Fed, and then they could repay it if they got the money, I suppose.
They could, but there's also some concern by some conservatives, fiscal conservatives, that states would just be doing more spending than they might normally do because they think this is coming.
Yeah, exactly. Although a lot of those governors are pretty busy just fighting the coronavirus. I'm not sure if they've got time to figure out how to spend a lot of extra money. Okay, thank you so much, Billy. Really great to have you with us. That's Bloomberg's Billy House, who reports on the Congress for us. Coming up, taking advantage of the less fortunate in a time of crisis. We talk with Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro about what he's doing to protect his citizens in the state of Pennsylvania. It's sad to say that some people will try to take advantage of anything they can. That's coming up on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are mixed, but oil is plunging. U.S. oil producers have not cut productions to match the drop in demand, and so the nation's oil storage tanks are filling to the brim. West Texas Intermediate crude falling below $10 a barrel. The Dow is down 200 points, S&P dropping 11, but the Nasdaq is up 26 points. United Airlines expects to record a $2 billion loss in the first quarter. The global spread of the coronavirus essentially halted air travel, causing sales to plummet. There's speculation that the 3 biggest airlines may cut more than 100,000 jobs. And Congress appears to be nearing an agreement to put as much as $500 billion into a new loan program intended to keep small businesses afloat until the coronavirus pandemic ends. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Are you in?
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve.
Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face-to-face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
This is a message from the government. Coronavirus is a national emergency, life-threatening for people of all ages everywhere in the UK. To help save lives, stay home. Only go outside for food, health reasons, daily exercise, or to work, but only if you cannot work from home. Stay home. Anyone can get it, and anyone can spread it. Coronavirus. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
From barbers to dog groomers, at Starling Bank, we'll help you keep your business off the ground. With no monthly fees to weigh you down. Your business is ready for takeoff. Starling Bank, helping business fly.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro is here to tell us what his state is doing to protect its citizens from fraud and other abuse during this time of crisis. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
All right. I thank you very much, David Weston. Just want to begin with a couple of headlines on the Bloomberg. Number of new COVID-19 cases in Texas has dropped 19% from Sunday to 535 today. That according to state officials. And from France, word that the number of corona deaths has risen by 547 to 20,265. Stocks falling from a 6-week high. Investors on edge as oil plunges to unprecedented levels, and a spate of corporate earnings are on tap. S&P 500 index halting a 2-day gain. Dow Jones Industrial Average now lower by more than 1%. We've got the Dow down 1.3%. That is a drop of 310 points. The S&P is down 24, a drop there of 0.8%. Nasdaq down 11, a decline there of 0.1%. 10-year up 2/32. Yield right now 0.63%. Gold up by 0.8%, $16.95 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude, looking at a quote on the Bloomberg here, $1.74 a barrel, down 89%. We've got the Dow, the S&P, Nasdaq all declining. Another Federal Reserve report is signaling that America's longest economic expansion has collapsed. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
The Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago reports its national economic barometer dropped in March to a level that indicates the country has tumbled in a recession. Indicators on production and employment highlight the severe impact of the coronavirus. The 3-month average dropped to the lowest since the last recession in 2009. Vinny Darrell, Judice, Bloomberg Radio.
United Airlines Holdings tumbled after the company said it expected to record a $2.1 billion loss in the first quarter as the coronavirus outbreak all but erased air travel demand in March. UAL down now by 3.8% among some of the other airline names. American down 4.4%. Delta is down 2.1%. Southwest Airlines actually having an up day, higher by 0.1%. Mandatory store closures in the U.S. sparked a catastrophic drop in retail sales in March, and Forrester Research says this will worsen in April. Forrester says more than $150 billion in U.S. retail sales could disappear in April compared to the same month in 2019. Among some of the retail names today, we are seeing shares of Macy's trade lower. I'm Charlie Pallett. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks so much, Charlie. The coronavirus crisis has affected us all, but none more than those less fortunate. Whether it's the need for cash to pay the bills or the need to find some new way to protect themselves from their loved ones. And their loved ones. Crises like this can breed desperation, which sadly creates opportunity for the unscrupulous. We welcome now Josh Shapiro. He's Attorney General for the state of Pennsylvania. So, Mr. Attorney General, thank you so much for joining us. Give us a sense of what you have seen so far in Pennsylvania. We've heard various accounts in other states of people, for example, trying to get a hold of those $1,200 checks from people.
Well, we've seen scams, we've seen price gouging, we've seen a lot of negative behavior, but most of all, we've seen Pennsylvanians come together to try to do the right thing to stem the tide of this crisis. In order to best protect consumers and protect Pennsylvanians, we've taken a number of concrete steps in the Attorney General's office. I know other AGs have done this as well. We set up immediately a hotline to deal with price gouging, and we received 4,279 price gouging complaints basically in the last month, and we followed up on every single one of them. We have a special hotline for scams, and I set up a partnership with the federal government, with the United States Attorney in the Western District of Pennsylvania to use some of their cyber expertise to really dig deep on these scams. And we're seeing scams really in a few areas. Number one, around the stimulus checks, people trying to get hold of those. And number two, we're seeing it uniquely around filing for unemployment compensation here in Pennsylvania. We've lost a fifth of our workforce in just the last 3 weeks, and there's one place to go to file for unemployment on the state website, and instead people are setting up other links to take you to what seems to be a place to file for unemployment, and unfortunately they're scams. They're taking advantage of people when they're really, really struggling. So those are some of the bad things we've seen, but we've also seen a lot of good and partnered with the private sector to better protect consumers. So
go back for just a moment, if you would. When you talk about things like a fake unemployment insurance application, do they ask people for money in order to expedite their unemployment insurance claim? I mean, how do you get money from that if you're scamming people?
Great question. So really what's happening here is the scammers are trying to get to your personal information, bank account, a credit card, something like that. And so if they're able to get your bank account information by suggesting that, hey, if you register with us, we'll get you your unemployment check more quickly, that has a way of, taking advantage of people when they're very desperate, and understandably so. And then, being able to get in their bank account and take money away from them there.
Yeah, and when you talk about the over 4,000 complaints of potential price gouging here, in your experience, how many of them panned out? I mean, I assume sometimes people complain about price gouging when it's not price gouging.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, price gouging has a specific legal definition of being, an unconscionably excessive price, which is 20% higher than what the cost was in the week leading up to the crisis. But here's the thing. I tell all Pennsylvanians, I don't want you to do math, and I don't want you to worry about being a lawyer. You'll kind of know it when you see it. And so we encourage people to reach out. And what my approach is look, rather than getting into a protracted legal battle, if we can avoid that, just have a very good explanation, and that's the end of it. Most of the time when they are doing something wrong, they'll change their behavior because they know we're watching. And there have been some instances where they've been unwilling to change their behavior. And in fact, on 310 occasions, we've sent out cease and desist letters, basically a legal way of telling them to cut it out, and then they do. And so that's the process that we follow and the approach we take, and we think it's working to protect the good people of Pennsylvania.
Normally you have the full weight of the law that you can invoke. You can go into court, things like that. It must be difficult to go into court these days. Does that limit your law enforcement capability?
It doesn't on this. Again, we have pretty good power when it comes to going after price gouging, and it's working. I mean, just getting to the phase of sending out a cease and desist letter is enough to get them to cut it out. Look, we have a few egregious examples where you've got a pharmacy, actually not too far from where I live, just outside Philadelphia, where a $2 or $3 mask was selling for $49.99, where a small package of toilet paper was selling for almost $50. But these things are brought to our attention, and we battle back against the merchant, and they cut it out. One of the interesting things we've also seen, and we've been really aggressive on this, is the small mom and pop retailers saying, well, wait a second, I'm being price gouged by the wholesaler or distributor. And in fact, our laws allow me to go after the wholesaler or distributor as well. And that's a particularly effective thing to do because obviously they're distributing to not just the one mom and pop store on the corner, but many. And so it's allowing us to take a broader swath of the price gouging and get it out of the community and better protect consumers.
This is all on the financial side, as it were, which is terribly important. But what about on the health side? Do we have instances where people have sort of fake remedies, fake treatments, or even vaccines that they're trying to sell?
We've seen a few things on there. Number one, yes, we've seen people sort of hawking these fake treatments. And that's a scam, and it's largely targeting older Pennsylvanians. Second, and this was more prevalent in the first couple of weeks where you really couldn't get a test, where it's extremely difficult to get a test. People saying, here, we'll test you, we'll get you immediate results, and charging you hundreds and hundreds of dollars for that. And then finally, we've seen in some of the nursing homes, we've seen some scams involving, elderly folks there, and we've worked to address that as well. So we're working real hard on all fronts to protect Pennsylvania.
Just in the last few seconds we have here, what about the nursing homes? Because we're seeing it in New Jersey now. Is this a scandal in the making?
No, I think what we need to do is pay attention to the data coming out of these nursing homes and move more quickly. When people in nursing homes have fevers and are presenting themselves with these things, we need to act swiftly, and we need to make sure that the individuals in charge of these nursing homes aren't covering it up, that they're being honest with regulators, and that'll help us keep people safe.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's Josh Shapiro. He's Attorney General for the state of Pennsylvania. Coming up, we're going to talk about oil, which collapsed today, with Dan Pickering of Pickering Energy Partners. That's coming up next on Balance of Power Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fair housing. That's HUD.gov/fair housing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE.
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Oh, great. Really?
Night, Steve.
Yeah, see ya.
Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place. Ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Typical Danny. Yesterday was just one of those days. I was running late to dinner, so I had to do my makeup on the bus. But my favourite shirt got ruined when I spilt my foundation all over it. What a mare. But no worries. Just one wash and my clothes will smell perf with Surf. Surf gives you long-lasting fragrance with natural essential oils. Find your fragrance in Surf's laundry range.
Hiya, it's Mel B. I'm just calling to say whether you're searching for a babe, a boo, or a bit of fun, there's one B you can always rely on. Badoo, the dating app which matches you with people based on your interests. Now more than ever, we want to be connected. You're more than just a photo, so be your true self and connect with a like-minded community. There's a new B in town. Download the Badoo app today. Badoo, date honestly.
When we're stuck indoors all day, we might find our energy bills creeping up uninvited. The cheeky rascals. And none of us need that right now. But by simply switching your energy with Money Supermarket, you could save £280 on your bills. It's just one small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
on the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike. Just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ are all declining. Stocks pulling back from a 6-week high. Investors on edge as oil plunges to unprecedented levels, and a spate of corporate earnings are on tap. West Texas Intermediate crude, looking at the quote on the Bloomberg now, $1.40 a barrel, down 92%. We've got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ just turning higher, up now by a point on NASDAQ. S&P is down 20, a drop there of 0.7%. Dow down 283, a drop there of 1.2%. So oil lower primarily because the end of the May contract forces physical receipt at a time when storage capacity is low. Gold up 0.6%, $16.93 the ounce. The 10-year up 1/32 with a yield now of 0.63%. Recapping, stocks lower, S&P down 20, down 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues. And once again, here's your host, David Weston.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. From New York, this is Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. As Charlie just told us, the price of West Texas crude has fallen below $2 a barrel, 92% today. That's the sharpest drop, of course, in the modern era, as excess production runs into dwindling storage capacity, which runs into futures contracts coming due. We welcome now Dan Pickering. He's founder and chief investment officer of Pickering Energy Partners. So, Dan, thank you so much for being with us, because I must say I don't understand it. We knew that demand was down because of the pandemic. We knew there was something of a price war going on, but really under $2, is that enough to justify this kind of price?
Not long term, David. I think the issue here is we don't have a lot of storage capacity, and folks have to either sell that contract or deliver crude to Cushing, Oklahoma. So not enough storage right now. Folks are bailing out of that May contract. The real issue is that the out months, the June and July contract, are also under pressure because we got a supply and demand problem because of the virus.
How much of it's the United States? I mean, there's a big and growing difference between the WTI and Brent, right?
There is. So it's more of a U.S. problem than a global problem because we're the biggest supplier in the world, and we're overproducing right now, and our storage tanks are filling. So it's a bigger deal for us than a global contract, the Brent crude contract, because there's simply more places to store oil globally than there are here in the U.S.
How rapidly is supply adjusting to the reduction in demand? We had that price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia, but they, I guess, have kind of called that off. Are they getting the supply back down?
OPEC and Russia have pretty quickly shifted from fighting each other to sort of trying to survive, and so we've got a historic production cut from them, almost 10 million barrels a day, and that will kick in May 1st. And so we'll start to see global supplies come down because of voluntary curtailment starting in May. I think the bigger issue is nobody's making any money at these prices, and so you're seeing economic shut-ins here in the U.S. because people are losing money on a cash basis, and you're seeing these curtailments because of storage capacity being full. So we'll probably take 3 or 4 million barrels a day off of production here in the U.S. over the next 30 to 45 days because it's not making any money. You can't put it anywhere.
So essentially, as I understand it, whatever you can get for the oil is less than the variable cost, the actual increased incremental cost of getting out of the ground.
That's right. Cash costs of producing it and getting it to a pipeline probably run anywhere from, depending on where you're at, $5 to $15, maybe $20. And so with WTI prices quoted below that level, folks are losing money on a cash basis. Forget what it costs to drill the wells. Forget all those sub costs, just the physical production costs. You're losing cash. And so folks don't do that for very long. So the shut-ins are starting to happen.
Well, something's got to give sooner or later. Part of it will be, as you just said, there'll be shut-ins. We just stop producing nearly as much. But what else could be done? Could we expect more cuts out of OPEC Plus, as it were?
Yeah, very possible. If the Brent price continues to correct, we stay down here in the 20s for another month or two, we could see additional cuts from OPEC and Russia and other players. I think that they're probably waiting to see the impact of the low price on economic shut-ins before they take more steps. But you do whatever you've got to do to help support price at a certain point, and we're kind of getting there as it relates to kind of the whole global oil and gas business.
Dan, what do you make of the suggestion that perhaps the United States essentially start paying oil companies to keep the oil in the ground? I guess one way of thinking about it is they'd actually have the strategic petroleum reserve in the ground. They'd buy the oil and leave it there.
That strategic petroleum reserve is there already, meaning that oil is in the ground. Paying folks to not produce it, it would really be more about protecting jobs. One of the things that's coming in the oil patch is a huge amount of layoffs and potential structuring distress and bankruptcies amongst energy companies. So you wouldn't do it because you're afraid you won't have enough oil. You do it because you want to keep these companies solvent. I don't love it because I kind of think of the free market as solving this problem already. And it seems difficult to get that, sort of through the Congress and paid for. But, desperate times call for desperate measures. So I'd be surprised if it happens, but not shocked.
Give us a sense, if you have it, of the level of unemployment we could be looking at, because it's not just the energy companies, it's all the services companies, all the ancillary companies as well. It could be a lot of jobs. Is that right?
It could be. So, you think about numbers that are in the high hundreds of thousands, if not million job impact from this as it rolls through. And so it's not trivial. We lost maybe 500,000 jobs in the last downturn, and this is going to be more significant. So it's a big number.
Yeah, at the same time, is there an opportunity here for somebody? I mean, the prices must be pretty darn low. So if somebody did have the wherewithal, the balance sheet, the cash, is this a buyer's market, as it were, for companies or for assets?
Absolutely. The distress that's going to come into this space means you're going to have, assets that get very cheap. We think there's clearly a very good long-term story for energy demand. We're not all going to drive electric vehicles tomorrow. So energy is not going away anytime in the next couple of decades. So these assets are going to get cheap, and the folks that are around to own them for the next cycle are going to make a lot of money. So almost so bad it's good if you've got cash and can step in and be a buyer over the next 18 months.
Yeah, fascinating. In the meantime, talk about the banks who have loaned money, particularly some of the shale producers. They must be coming under some stress right now.
They are. Banks are worried about their loans at prices at these levels. Typically, the collateral, the reserves in the ground, support those loans when oil prices are this low. If they stayed here for a long time, those will wind up being bad loans. Oil's probably not going to stay this bad for too long, and so I think the market's very concerned about the bad loans. What I'd say is maybe 10 or 15% of them wind up bad. It's not going to be a huge number.
Does this favor the big integrated oil companies or not so much?
Absolutely. The big guys, primarily because they've got the balance sheet, the staying power, they're going to be the ones scooping up these cheap assets, most likely. Not necessarily right now, but over the next 2 years. They've got the ability to step in and do deals either with their currency of stock or with cash. So absolutely supports them and favors them in an environment where liquidity is crunched.
At the same time, in a highly volatile stock market, you got to worry about that dividend. If they got back the dividend to get the cash, that might hurt them too. Dividends,
you've seen a number of energy companies cut their dividends. Actually, the market's rewarded that for the smaller companies. But
interesting. Okay, Dan Pickering, really appreciate you being with us today. That's Dan Pickering of Pickering Energy Partners. That's going to do it for Balance of Power for today. A very eventful day, and not least because of that oil price now down under $2 a barrel. I'm David Weston, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
Stay in touch with your loved ones with great phones at great prices from Tesco Mobile. Like the incredible iPhone 7 with advanced HD front camera. Perfect for video calling. For just $13.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 14th of June. Was £15.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Do
2020 NFL Draft is on ESPN Radio on TuneIn. Starting Thursday, April 23rd, ESPN Radio has you covered with live coverage, discussions, and analysis of every pick from every round. Be there when the future stars of the NFL find their home and when your team selects the players that will shape their future for seasons to come. Don't miss the biggest event of the offseason with ESPN Radio on TuneIn.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk, radio, and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier to me. For me, Mike just took a couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from New York and New Jersey, streaming on YouTube. It is Monday, April 20th, 2020. Carol Messer along with Jason Kelly. And Jason, we're hearing talk of more federal aid likely coming, as are more warnings about reopening the economy too soon. We will hear from several leaders on lines, including the CEO of Intercontinental Hotels. He is Keith Barr. We're also going to talk to the president and CEO of the hospital that has been dealing with the virus from day one. And that's just a few names.
Absolutely. A packed show to be sure. Also keeping a very close eye on oil. WTI trading below $1 a barrel. Mind-blowing in a lot of ways. The implications for that go all through the global economy, an economy in which lots of other things are happening too. Let's get an update on everything that's happening in the business world. For that, we turn to Charlie Pellet.
All right. Hi, thank you very much, and happy Monday to you both. Got to begin with crude. Last quote there. WTI, West Texas Intermediate, 59 cents a barrel, down 97%. A story we're watching for you here. Bloomberg News. The Dow, the S&P lower, NASDAQ higher. Mixed Monday here to kick things off with the S&P down 21, a drop of 0.7%. The Dow down 298 points now, down 1.2%. NASDAQ's been swinging between gains and losses on the plus side now, up by 4. That is a gain of about 0.1%. 10-year up 230 seconds with a yield of 0.63%. We've got gold up $10 the ounce now at $16.93, higher by 0.6%. Again, last quote on crude, West Texas Intermediate, 46 cents a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Let's set the Business Week agenda right off the bat here, Carol. We do Have a lot to get to today, but trying to make sense of where the equity trade is and making sense of some of those headlines that Charlie just read. Let's get into it. Sarah Ponczak joins us, cross-asset reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from Florida. Dave Wilson, a little closer to home. He is joining us from New Jersey, stocks editor, of course, and the author of the chart and stock of the day. Dave, set the tone for us here. Is oil driving the trade? What's sort of underneath what we're seeing on the equity side?
Well, it's a piece of it, but it's not the whole puzzle. I mean, you look at the 11 main industry groups in the S&P 500, and you see, even with what's happening in the oil markets, energy isn't the worst performer. You've got to look at utilities and real estate, the two sort of interest-sensitive areas that really jump to mind when you're looking at these 11 main industry groups in the index. They're both down more. So it kind of tells you, just how much concern there is about where rates are headed here.
Also, a reminder how much energy's been beaten up, right, Dave?
Oh, that's already a big piece of it, no question. And it all kind of fits together in that sense. But I'll tell you, there are some interesting tales, even within energy at this point. I mean, yeah, the oil companies are down, but Halliburton, oil services, they came out, talked about how demand was going to drop sharply this quarter and remain weak at least through the rest of the year. Shares are up 3.2% as we speak. Now, their first quarter earnings and revenue beat estimates, but, there's so much focus on cash at this point, you have to wonder what the real story is. But it does kind of jump out on a day when, stocks are mostly lower here.
But mostly higher from their lows. And Sarah Ponczak, come on in on that, because you and Vildana Hajrek have a great story on the Bloomberg about 5 individuals, pros on the market, who say that the new bull market has actually legs. What do they say?
So it seems like it's more difficult to find bulls at this juncture, because I feel like typically the pessimists are louder, but there are plenty of people who are optimistic on the market right now. And we spoke to many of them last week ahead of the weekend, and they cite many different reasons as to why they're bullish right now. Now, Sean Nodden, he's over at RBC, for example, he says that if you're a short-term trader right now, maybe hold off, maybe there will be a better opportunity. But he says that for anyone who has a time horizon that is a bit further out, he says, for one, yes, the coronavirus seems to be making its way. Headlines have been better. For one, at the same time, he says that interest rates are extremely low. The pessimists might say they're low for a reason, but that's a debate for another time. And to him, he sees that there's reason with the S&P 500 around 2,800 that actually looks very attractive. Other people obviously point to the Fed, the amount of stimulus that we have seen, and the Fed saying that they'll essentially do whatever it takes to support the economy. So there are bulls out there, I will say. But I do want to come back to the discussion you were just having about oil, because as we speak, oil's trading, WTI crude oil is trading at 37 cents a barrel. And at one point...
Wait, 37 cents a barrel.
It was at 59 cents just a couple minutes ago. I mean, that shows you how fast it's going down.
At 1:53 on the dot, we hit 1 cent a barrel. And the CME did say that the contract could trade negative, which is pretty unbelievable when you think about it. But there is a technical factor at play that you really have to take into account, and it's probably why we're not seeing energy prices really being hit much further too, and that's the fact that we're dealing with an expiration of a contract. So the futures contract for oil right now, we're trading on the May contract. The rollover is tomorrow. So if you were to look at the June contract, it's still trading above $20 a barrel. So where we are really seeing the most effect is in the May contract, and that's because it's really hard to find people right now who actually want to own physical barrels of oil. When you have no demand or hardly any demand for oil at the time, usually people who would want to own physical barrels of oil, like an airline or an oil refiner, they don't want it right now. So you can't find any buyers for physical oil right now.
Well, that's a really good point, Sarah. And how much also we've done the stories on the terminal about that there's no place to put it anymore.
Exactly. It's very difficult. Storage is coming at a premium, which is why when you look at WTI trading at 1 cent a barrel, and actually Evercore ISI did point out that some physical oil prices are already trading negative at a few delivery points, and that's because storage is a burden. So you might have to pay for that now at this point in time, which is pretty unbelievable to think about.
So, Dave, come back in here, and this will tee up Sarah for a quick comment as well. Earnings, how much are they driving all of this, and what are you seeing so far as you try and make sense both of the numbers but also the tone and substance of what CEOs are saying?
I don't know if people are paying all that much attention to earnings, frankly. It's all about the balance sheet. It's all about cash. You take a company like DuPont that lined up $3 billion in financing for the next year, and its shares are up 4.7%. So, that's the thing that's really in focus here. And beyond that, people come pointing out just how many companies are not bothering to give investors a sense of how they see the rest of the year. Earlier today, Bank of America out with a report, 80 companies in the S&P 500 have, shall we say, withdrawn guidance for 2020. So it really becomes a matter of counting the cash now and maybe looking to the results next year.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, right? And you do wonder, and I guess the longer the shutdown goes on, that visibility, it's just not there. And we're going to be talking to the CEO of Intercontinental. We're going to be talking to various individuals, leaders in their own fields to see what kind of visibility they have at this point, Jason. And also, what does it mean to reopen the economy realistically? Like, we need to get a handle of that, because that will play into economic growth and ultimately earnings for all of the industries that are out there.
All right, Sarah Ponczak, 30 seconds. You've got a story on the Bloomberg about earnings. What's your take?
So hitting off of what Dave said, it's pretty unbelievable. We've hardly seen any companies actually give guidance. However, last week, according to Credit Suisse, 9 of those companies had given guidance. Well, when they actually reported earnings, the time that you would get updates, they actually withdrew the guidance. So the few companies that we had actually had some visibility, it seemed, not anymore. And that's to be expected going forward, likely through the season.
Amazing. These are, Carol, you look forward to earnings season, and now
it's like a drinking game. Like every time we're shocked here, like we'd be just on our butts right now because it's just been one shocking headline after another.
Crude below zero. That's the latest shocking headline.
Exactly.
There you go.
All right,
on our butts. That's Carol. That's Carol Masters' quote for today. All right, Sarah Ponczak, thank you so much. Cross Asset Report joining us on the phone from Florida. Dave Wilson, you'll be back with us a little bit later on with your chart and stock of the day. Carol,
let's just quickly do the Bloomberg Business Week bite of the day. One number that tells us a lot. Today's number, you've heard it a lot. 10 million. Shake Shack will return its entire 10 million loan from the U.S. government. The company's leaders putting out a statement amid a lot of criticism over who got access to the funds from the government that's supposed to be for small business, Jason.
Yeah, we may talk a little bit about that later on. In the meantime, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got world and national headlines. Hey there, Bob.
Jason, thank you very much. Well, oil has plunged to near a penny a barrel as the coronavirus pandemic ravages global economies, threatening to erase an entire decade of jobs and wipe out hundreds of billions of dollars from company valuations. Industrial and economic activity is grinding to a halt as governments around the globe extend shutdowns due to the swift spread of the coronavirus. Oil has faced its own knock-on effects, with the market massively oversupplied and nowhere to put physical barrels of crude. Democratic leaders and the Trump administration are trying to finalize an agreement on the next dose of federal spending to prop up the economy. Larry Kudlow, the president's economic advisor, says an agreement is close. Novartis will run a U.S. study of the malaria drug hydroxychloroquine. The medicine has been hyped as a potential treatment for coronavirus. General Motors and Ford's finance arms likely face multi-billion-dollar losses linked to the dramatic drop in used vehicle prices. According to J.P. Morgan Chase analysts, prices are falling faster and steeper than J.P. Morgan was expecting. Global news 24 hours a day. And on Bloomberg Quick Take, I'm Bob Moon. Carol, Jason, back to you.
All right, Bob, thank you so much. We really appreciate check in with you throughout the show, the next few hours on those world and national headlines. In the meantime, Carol, getting ready for The first in a series of conversations, I think if we were trying to map out a theme here for the day, it's really about where we go forward. Yeah. And the travel industry is right at the tip of the spear, right? I mean, we think about it, talk about it all the time.
Well, we were having conversations even at home about, okay, what I anticipate my work travel load will be like when we get back to normal. We were talking about family vacations and traveling and, we get on a plane kind of thing. We're going to have the CEO of Intercontinental Hotels, Keith Barr. They are global, all over the world. And prior to his current role, Keith also spent 4 years as CEO of IHG's Greater China business. So I am curious to see what he is seeing over in Asia and how they are coming back, because I think that really will help us figure out maybe how we come back here in the United States and really in the rest of the world. So curious to hear from him about what he has to say. I caught up with him at the Breakaway London session last November. We are in a very, very different environment.
Yeah, that feels like 100 years ago, doesn't it?
Totally. And then, so the hotel industry has been hurt really severely, and so has the restaurant business. And we've got the chef and owner of 11 Madison Park. They have really transformed what they are doing. They're now feeding others. They're looking to save restaurants. They're looking to save their workers. And what they have been doing is pretty remarkable as well.
And let's not forget, this has been named the best restaurant in the world.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's just incredible.
And, it's a place you and I have both been. And, it's a phenomenal location. The food, obviously, some of the chefs have gone on, who have worked there have gone on to do unbelievable things as well. We're also going to hear from the CEO of the Pittsburgh International Airport. Obviously, air travel is a piece of all of this, too, as you allude to. Do you get on a plane? But there are knock-on effects of that, too, in the sense of, we're not just talking about you and me hopping on a plane. We're talking about people who work there. We're talking about, a really vibrant local industry in some of these cities, a place like Pittsburgh, which is outside of sort of the coastal mess that we've been involved in. But, a very, very important and wide-ranging industry.
I just got to say, Fast Company in early March named them one of the most innovative companies out there. They have really been kind of pushing the envelope. So we'll see how the virus has been impacting them and those initiatives. This is Bloomberg.
All right, let's get to Charlie Pellet now. He's got a Bloomberg Business Flash. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much. Absolutely staggering. Looking at the oil quote on the Bloomberg Professional Service, looking at West Texas Intermediate crude with a negative handle, down $3, minus $3.70. It is down right now by 120% today on West Texas Intermediate crude. Developing stories. Stay with Bloomberg for the latest. Gold is up now by 0.6%, $16.92 the ounce. The 10-year up 230 seconds. The yield there 0.63%. But again, worth repeating, looking at a negative quote for a barrel of oil. Stocks falling from a 6-week high. Investors on edge as oil plunges to unprecedented levels, and a spate of corporate earnings on tap. So the S&P 500 index halting a 2-day gain, negative on the screen right now, down 27 points. That is a drop of just about 1%. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 363 points, a decline there of 1.5%. NASDAQ's been swinging between gains and losses. Volatile trading session today. NASDAQ is down by 10 points, a drop there of 0.1%. Among Dow members, oil stocks dropping. ExxonMobil is down 3.8% right now. Chevron shares, they are lower by 3%. So again, recapping, losing day for U.S. equities here, keeping an eye on oil. Oil plunging. We've got the S&P down 28, down by 1%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you. We do welcome all of our Bloomberg television viewers, and joining us now on Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg TV, a leader in one of the hardest hit industries as a result of the pandemic. And we're talking about the hotel industry. Keith Barr is with us. He is the CEO at Intercontinental Hotels Group, and he joins us on the phone from London. Keith, nice to have you here with us. Thank you so much. I know this is a hard time for you and your industry. Your family, I hope, are doing well. And tell us about, your company and your employees, how everyone's doing.
Well, yeah, thank you. It's great to be here, and thank you. Families all well. I think we're into our 5th week of all being home, sheltering at home and distance learning, so I think we've all learned something about this. And a lot has changed since November when we saw each other. A challenging time for the hotel industry. I mean, when you think about the impact of the travel restrictions, social distancing, borders being closed, cancellation of conferences, meetings, and events, we've never seen an impact to demand for the hotel industry like this in our lifetime. When I looked at the start of the year, we had a fairly good January and February, and then as an industry, we saw revenues begin falling quite quickly in March. And I saw the U.S. data just this morning, and so from the start of April, it looks like U.S. revenue per available room is down 80% year over year at the start of the month of April. So again, just
go ahead, Keith.
And the impact on people has been significant, right? I mean, this industry employs, travel and tourism is 1 in 10 jobs globally. And so you've seen millions of people in the U.S. become unemployed in a very, very short period of time.
And so, Keith, help us understand how that plays through to your business, by the numbers. I mean, how many people have been affected within your company by this, either temporarily or God forbid, permanently?
Yeah, so, I mean, we have a model where we are basically a franchisor for most of our business. Right. So most of the hotels that we have around the world, nearly 6,000, are really small businesses, or an individually owned hotel who may employ 15, 20, 50 people. But we have about 400,000 people who work in our hotels around the world. And many of those people today have been furloughed or been made unemployed. And so thankfully, the U.S. did pass the CARES Act and had the Paycheck Protection Program, which enabled these small businesses to hopefully retain a lot of their staff. And at the corporate level, we've been cutting people's salaries, we've been cutting capital expenditures, really focusing on liquidity to make sure that we can get through this very, very challenging time in the industry.
Well, having said that, Keith, and having kind of an asset-light, business, how has that protected you as a company overall from falling into a deeper crisis?
Yeah, I mean, we were some of the less leveraged companies out there in this industry, and since we don't own a lot of assets, we have less exposure. So our focus really has been on customers and on colleagues and on our owners, and how do we help all those different individual stakeholders get through this. So customers, it's been about giving them flexibility on bookings and so forth. With our colleagues, it's been helping them access the programs that are around the world, whether it's there's a program here in the UK where the government is basically funding up to 80% of someone's pay up to £2,500, or accessing the federal unemployment and local employment in the US, with our owners accessing small business loans that turn to grants. So we've been very, very focused on that, because those are the people that are being the hardest impacted. And we know by looking after all those stakeholders and helping them get through this, we can come out of this a stronger business and a healthier business. But it is, again, people talk about challenging. I mean, I've been through the financial crisis. I've been through, 9/11, and we've never seen demand drop like this. And I think an industry is going to have to think about how does it come out of this, and how do we work with government, and how do we work as an industry to help businesses stay vibrant during this time frame, reopen, and then see what the new norm looks like going forward.
Well, we want to talk about that new normal for sure, but one thing I want to ask you about, Keith, before we get too far away from it, is what the experience of your owners and your colleagues has been in terms of accessing those small business loans, because we're hearing varying reports about availability. We've heard a little bit of controversy of, who's getting it and who's not. What's coming back to you as your colleagues report in?
Well, let me start by saying, just for the record, IHG, we have not received any funds from the Paycheck Protection Program, full stop. And we've been very focused on getting our owners there. So we've been hosting webinars from day one, helping our owners get to these programs, and had really good success with it. Number of wonderful stories about hotels, like Holiday Inn Express that was closed, was able to access the program and then reopen and hire the staff back too. So it hasn't been perfect, clearly, but you think about the Small Business Association, I think processes normally about $30 billion a year in the U.S. I think they did $300 billion already in a month. Real testament to they're trying to help out as many businesses as they can. Clearly, the program needs to expand, though. One of the things we've been saying to the government was, great first step, but these programs are going to have to expand and be extended, because this is not going to be over in a month. Business doesn't go back to normal tomorrow, and so we've got to think about the long term. Again, the health and stability of an industry. It's 1 in 10 jobs globally and in the U.S. is in this sector. And so that's a lot of people who we need to look after, and a lot of small businesses who buy from local vendors, who hire local construction workers to build these hotels. It's this interconnectedness of our economy we have to recognize and make sure we can kind of help work through that together.
Does the government understand that, Keith? Do you think they understand that when you get on the other side, what really needs to be done?
I think so. I've actually had a couple of calls with the U.S. Fed. We've been engaging with the White House. with the Senate, Congress. I mean, they really do understand that they had to move quickly. They do seem to understand that they're going to have to do more. So hopefully they'll be able to get the next part of the package out. But I think it's responsibility of business to help continue to educate them on how this is unfolding, the impact it's going to have more broadly, and also how we're part of the solution too, because we're trying to help out as much as we possibly can. You know, we're hosting frontline workers and medical professionals all around the world in our hotels. You know, we're donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to food banks in different markets around the world to help out people who are in need. We're providing through a great initiative called First Responders First, giving thousands of room nights to first responders who are close to medical facilities who need accommodation. You know, I think that's, as an industry, how we have to rally around is how can we help get through this, both by supporting owners, supporting colleagues, but also our frontline workers and medical professionals.
And Keith, as you look around the world, as you pointed out, and as Carol pointed out in the introduction, truly a global company, you probably have some inputs that other CEOs don't have in terms of how this looks on the ground in different markets around the world. What are we missing? What should we know about maybe some things and the way this virus is manifesting in the economic manifestation at different points of the globe?
It's quite interesting. You're seeing the countries who've got out quite quickly on testing, quite quickly on contact tracing, and understand the use of technology to be able to really manage it and manage the economic impact and open up parts of the economy. Also, countries where they've got very closed borders, or New Zealand's being put out there, and Australia's coming quite well now. So countries that have been able to act quickly, decisively on testing and tracing have done a better job in keeping the economies going. And it will be critical for the U.S. to do that, and Europe as well too. And everyone's taking a slightly different approach, and because we're going to be challenged in businesses until there is, again, better therapeutics, better testing, and of course then a vaccine. Technology is what's been, I thought, quite interesting. What they did in China, the ability to effectively, won't probably happen in the Western world, but track everyone's movements, know have you come into contact with someone who's infected, then having you self-isolate, has enabled them to really manage the number of cases and number of deaths down very, very aggressively. And, we have to think through how do we manage through that on a global basis going forward.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Keith, because we've been wondering, too, what will be the long-term impacts on the travel industry. We've had a lot of conversations, before 9/11, we kind of easily went through to our gates. Yeah. That changed dramatically. What changes do you see? Will there be temperature checks? Will there need to be some kind of tracing and tracking in order for the world to kind of go back to how we knew it before the virus?
Excellent question. We had that same conversation earlier in the week with a couple of other CEOs from different industries. We were talking about the futures of our businesses, and people said, well, travel. And I said, well, I can still remember 9/11. I was in California getting ready to board a flight to the East Coast, saw the planes hit the towers, and we asked ourselves, would people ever get on planes again? And they did. It just changed, as you pointed out, right? We take our shoes off now. There's different security measures in place. You can't meet friends and family at the gate anymore. But we did get back to travel because on travel from a business perspective, it's core to doing a lot of businesses. That will probably change. Leisure travel is something that inherently people love to do. But I think the experiences will change in travel as we learn from this. And it may lead to temperature checks. It's going to focus on increased cleanliness standards. It's going to focus on how we change food and beverage operations to manage contact. So I know as a company, we have a whole team of innovation people working on this right now, thinking through how is this going to evolve? How is this going to change? How do we give customers that sense of surety that we're looking after their interests when they're in our hotels?
Keith, do we not fully open up, though, until we have a vaccine?
No, I don't believe fundamentally until you get better therapeutics, broad-based testing, and then vaccine, do you fully reopen. I just think that there's going to be enough people who are going to change their behavior. In the UK here, they're talking about reopening up, except for over 70s. And they're saying if you're over 70 years old, we're going to basically make you shelter at home probably for another year. That's pretty dramatic. That's a change in society. And so, conferences and events will look and change and be different. So I think things will come back. I think the companies that are the strongest companies, both from a operational perspective and reputational perspective, will do better than others. but it will take time for things to recover, and it's not tomorrow. And I think everyone's becoming clearer on that, because there's definitely a lot of challenges facing a number of businesses. But I do think if we're focused on making the customer journey a great experience, a safe experience, people will get back on planes and will get in cars. Our belief is domestic businesses will come back first, mainstream businesses will come back first, and then gradually things, as there's more confidence of the vaccine, will turn into conferences and events and conventions again.
Right. I do want to bring you one headline, and very relevant to our conversation. President Trump laying the groundwork for reopening the federal government. We'll obviously bring you some more details. This should come as no huge surprise given what we've been hearing from the federal government, maybe a little bit in contrast with state governments. And Keith, very apropos for our conversation here, because you're going to have, and I do not say this in a pejorative way, but more in just a descriptive way, sort of a patchwork across this country and across the world. How do you sort of manage that with your partners in terms of either testing some new ideas, of giving them the best advice in terms of how they should run their businesses? Because ultimately, your name's on the door.
Yeah, no, I just was having a call with my team on it, and I have my executive team. We meet at least once a week for a very long session going through where we are managing the crisis. And three of the big work streams we have underway is consistencies of operational execution for cleanliness and sanitation in the hotels. We already have great practices, but how do we make them better and scale them up globally? And when each country has a slightly different view on what you should do as well from a government standpoint. So do you take the WHO recommendations, or do you take the CDC recommendations, which are different? So getting very clear about that from a hotel operational standpoint. Being very clear then also how we open up our offices around the world, and then how we protect our colleagues in the hotels as well, too. And so we're working through each one of those work streams right now, gathering a ton of data from the teams all around the world and saying, who is doing best practice here? Who's got the right approach? I was just watching some of you have seen this, the return to work video for Nike in China. If you haven't seen it yet, you should. It's amazing. It's basically going through temperature checks and social distancing and prepackaged foods being in the office. And how do you think about looking after your colleagues in a very responsible way? And we're going to have to continue to scale those things up on a global basis and be very focused. And interesting, I was talking to a number of owners recently, and the number one thing they want to do is give customers the confidence to travel again.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, you know what? It's once again, forgive me, but I feel like it's, focusing on our community. And I think we've all gotten more involved in our own world, and whether it's social media or what have you. But I just think we have to think about, the greater community at large. I do wonder, too, when you look at your greater community of the hotel industry, you did talk about, Keith, the stronger operational companies will come back, and maybe they are better positioned. As a result, do you see those that have the stronger balance sheets consolidating more of the market in a post-COVID-19 world?
I mean, interesting that the top players in this industry were already seeing consolidation, because we had, a significant portion of existing supply, but a disproportionate amount of the pipeline around the world being built. And so there was that trend already happening, the big companies getting bigger. That's going to continue and probably accelerate, because the reality is, and the new norm going forward in a more challenged environment, the companies that have scale, that can leverage their procurement powers to reduce the cost to operate, the cost of distribution, the cost to build, all those things will create value for owners. And so you'll see people shift in that direction. So I think you'll see the bigger companies continue to get bigger, and you may see some of the smaller companies need to consolidate because they can't compete going forward.
And so how soon does that happen, Keith? I mean, we're in a time of great uncertainty. I know that new normal is elusive, to say the least, and we don't know when things are going to start to open up. But are those the sorts of conversations that start to happen this summer? Do we wait until things really settle down? And to Carol's point, when we're in a more regular sort of travel vibe, whatever that looks like on the other side in 2021, how soon does some of that movement start to occur?
I'm not sure. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we're faced with collectively as leaders in business, and what you all are doing is no one understands the trajectory. So it's really hard to call the timing on anything. So I think what you have to focus on is, how do I position my business to be incredibly well-positioned coming out of this. From a cost-based perspective, from an investment in innovation, from what I said to my team going into this day one was, we have to focus on building a great reputation with all of our stakeholders, and we will be principle-led in everything we do. So how do we look after customers and colleagues and owners and do the right thing, be part of the solution with government? And that's guided us from day one. Companies that do that, as well as manage their business operationally well and think about innovation, will come out of this very, very well-positioned. And so that's where I think my team is focused on right now. I'm sure some of the other big leaders in business are doing the same thing.
It's so funny. I went back to our notes when we spoke in London, and one of the questions we polled, we were in front of an audience and our breakaway members here at Bloomberg, and it was, what external factor is hindering your company's growth the most? We talked about Brexit and trade tensions. We talked about disruptive technology, lack of qualified talent. Everybody was competing for talent because the labor market was so tight. We talked about overregulation. I feel like as a leader, that list probably has changed dramatically. And I think about, what you have learned as being a leader in this environment where things can come out of, nowhere, unexpected, black swans, and having to pivot. Tell us a little bit about leading and what you've learned about being a leader in this time, Keith.
Yeah, when I have talked to the team about it, as more challenging things get, the calmer we have to be. And it's about communication, too. So, I normally used to communicate with my senior leaders in the business on a fairly regular basis. And then once a quarter when we did results, I would talk to about the top 1,000 people that work above property. This is sort of directors, managers, vice presidents, and so forth. I'm doing those calls every 2 weeks now. I'm basically talking for about 30 minutes, giving an update, and I'm opening up to 30 minutes of Q&A live. Ask me anything you want. And I think you have to have that level of authenticity and transparency to help lead through these sorts of crises. People want to know, what are you thinking? And being honest with them, saying it when you don't know. And I think that has served us incredibly well through this process so far of how you communicate, the frequency you do it, and the authenticity behind it is incredibly important. Secondly is make sure you capture all the learnings from this.
Mistakes are made, right? You make mistakes because you don't have a playbook on this.
You don't. You know what? Everybody has pandemic probably on their risk register, but it's high impact, ultra low probability, right? And how do you plan for something like this? But thinking about business continuity, we have call center, we have shared services centers, and in the past, our business continuity plan was we have multiple sites, right? You have a problem, site A, you pivot to site B. What happens when they're both in the same country, and the country says you have to close all these centers down tomorrow? Fortunately, we got out in front of it and created a lot of technology solutions, let people work from home on laptops and VPNs and so forth. But we were doing that real time, 4 or 5 weeks out before it actually happened, saying, because we were doing the what ifs. And so it's, learning about your business throughout this. What are the strengths you've got and what are the weak points you've uncovered? Because, again, liquidity is something we've never focused on as a company because we've been just a phenomenally cash generative business. Every company's focused on liquidity now and really understanding sources and uses of cash. And so I think it will drive more discipline into people's businesses going forward and teach them how to make them, I keep using the word stronger, but I've told my team, let's capture every single learning here, and either we address it today or when we come out of this, how do we implement it going forward?
And so, Keith, one of the questions that I'm sure you're thinking about a lot is how we all think about travel on the other side of this, leisure travel, business travel, and this whole notion of what's essential, what's non-essential, especially when it comes to business travel, is really going to be redefined. You've talked about using technology. We're using technology every day in an entirely different way. I'm sitting in my daughter's bedroom in, the suburbs of New York. Carol's sitting in her office in Jersey City.
My dog is
London.
Next to me.
Carol's dog, Scout, is right there. What sort of synthesize all that for us? Like, what do you think travel looks like on the other side of this? Do you have any sense yet?
Yeah, it's from somebody who runs a global travel company. You think I have a personal perspective on it. I travel 150, 120, 100 days a year, right? And sometimes I feel like I travel too much, and I give away 100,000 frequent flyer points for a week at home.
Yeah,
I know some people who just love to travel.
Yes,
because it's their one time to get away for the year, and so there's a lot of people who don't do it as frequently as I do it. who just really enjoy it, and it's an incredible experience. And I think that will come back into it. I think on the leisure side, we talked about, we'll come back into it. I think that people will think differently about, do we have to have a meeting face-to-face, or can we do it virtually now? Is there a more efficient way for us to do this? Some things will have to happen face-to-face. It's who we are. But I do think it will have some impact, and I would be disingenuous if I didn't think that certain parts of this industry will be impacted more than others, because people may not want to go do it that way anymore. And we'll have to figure out how we evolve and how we change when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like, just anecdotally, I feel like you're going to have these situations where instead of someone saying, hey, listen, I'm going to get on a plane from New York to Los Angeles and go for this one meeting, they're going to say, all right, let's do a phone call. And then when I, can sort of consolidate 3 or 4 meetings, then I'll, go from New York to Los Angeles. But, when you start to sort of factor that into lots and lots and lots of people, like that is a pretty seismic change potentially. It changes the footprint of the entire industry, I would imagine.
It does. Also remember, a lot of travel that is in this industry it's not big conferences and events. It's individual going from point A to point B. We have a huge drive business in the U.S. Our mainstream business with Holiday and Holiday Express is that kind of regional salesperson going from point A to point B to point C.
Right.
And so I know we often associate travel with these great luxury destinations and these big flashy hotels. A lot of people, it's sort of, they're paying, $100 a night to stay in a Holiday Inn Express someplace as they're traveling, or they're going to a soccer tournament with their kids. And it's such a diversity in what drives travel that I think, and a lot of those things will continue when things come back. But going back to the whole, what changed after 9/11, things did change, but things came back.
Yeah.
I'm sure things will change here, but things will come back. It's a question of what period of time.
Keith, just got about a minute. We've been asking this of all of the CEOs that we've been talking to from different industries about how ultimately, when we emerge from the crisis, what's going to be the biggest difference in our world, especially in your area of expertise, and just got about a minute here. What do you think will be the most difference?
I think people will use technology more and more, honestly. And then the integration of technology and travel, that will continue to expand. And I think that people are seeing more and more the importance of communities. We talk about our role in communities and the hotel industry, and whether it's donating to food banks or housing first responders, I think people feel more connected to their local communities more than ever. And I know that our hotel communities feel that way as well. And I think we're going to appreciate that a lot more.
Well, we certainly appreciate all the time that you gave us, and do stay safe and look forward to talking on the other side of this, Keith. Thank you. Keith Barr is Chief Executive Officer of Intercontinental Hotels Group, joining us on the phone from London. And I do think about it, Jason, it was just November, not such a long time ago. The priorities, the competition for workers, we talked about Brexit, it was just such a different mindset. And here we are today, and your list is very, very different about your concerns.
Yeah, everybody always used to say, well, there's always the exogenous event. Here it is. We're in it, folks. All right, let's get to world and national headlines now. Bob Boone is here. Hey, Bob.
Jason, this has never, ever happened before. Oil futures collapsing below zero, wiping out all value as the deepening economic turmoil caused by the coronavirus crisis leaves many people desperate. In an extreme move showing just how oversupplied the U.S. oil market has become, pricing has actually turned negative for May contracts, futures settling at minus 37.63 a barrel, pricing actually turning negative as desperate traders take unprecedented action to avoid taking delivery of physical crude. This has broken every low for oil prices since 1946. Meantime, Democratic leaders and the Trump administration are trying to finalize an agreement on the next dose of emergency federal spending to prop up the economy. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports.
The negotiators are getting close to agreement, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow said in a Bloomberg interview.
The talks are progressing nicely. They're very constructive. They're bipartisan. Good progress is being made. May be a transition month into a much better economy, moving out into the summer. That is our hope. That may be more prayer than hope.
Kudlow said Democratic demands to augment disaster grants, subsidize hospitals, and step up virus testing have been agreed to. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
It's not all bad news today as New York's daily death rate falls below 500. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says the Empire State may be starting to descend from its peak. New Jersey, meantime, reports another 177 COVID-19 deaths for a total of 4,377. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening. Be part of the college sports conversation on TuneIn. Hear the latest storylines around SEC football with the Paul Feinbaum Show.
I distinctly remember when you were hired, and I must say most of us thought you were out of your mind, giving up. I wouldn't call it a cush job because you were traveling across the country.
Get your college hoops fix with college basketball talk on NBC Sports.
Headed by Shabazz Napier, that also included Amita Brima, who is in and around the NBA ranks right now, and DeAndre Daniels, who was the 37th pick in the 2014 NBA draft. So my question to you is,
or listen to the daily news from around the wide world of college football with College Football Live.
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team. And I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, and it may be recency bias having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football.
Discover these and more college sports podcasts right here on TuneIn. Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown to a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
The moves may be choreographed, but the drama is real.
I dare you! I beg you to come down here right now!
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown, check out the What's Wrong with Wrestling show. And for a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, listen to Talk is Jericho. For these and more podcasts, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Sproul from the First Draft Podcast. 2020 NFL Draft is on ESPN Radio on TuneIn. Starting Thursday, April 23rd, ESPN Radio has you covered with live coverage, discussions, and analysis of every pick from every round. Be there when the future stars of the NFL find their new home and when your team selects the players that will shape their future for seasons to come. Don't miss the biggest event of the offseason. It's live on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all lower. Oil, a major story today. Oil futures collapsing to below zero for the first time ever as the deepening economic turmoil caused by the coronavirus left traders desperate to avoid taking delivery of physical crude oil. Stocks pulling back from a 6-week high. We've got the S&P 500 index lower now by 32 points, down 1.1%. The Dow bouncing along the bottom, down 410. That's a drop of 1.7%. NASDAQ down 25, a drop there of 0.3%. 10-years up 5/30 seconds. The yield 0.62%. Gold up 0.6% at $16.92 the ounce. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, let's turn to the medical side of this. This was a story that was one of the first I read this morning, in part because of its writer, Robert Langreth. He joins us on the phone from Massachusetts. He and the team have been doing just some phenomenal work. It really helps us understand the complexities, but also both the potentials and the challenges of where we go here medically. He joins us, as well as Joel Weber, the editor, of course, of Bloomberg Business Week. Joel's on the phone from Brooklyn. Joel, I want to start with you because you guys have done a really nice job of keeping the medical piece of this front and center, even going back, it's like 5, 6, however many weeks ago, with some of the great cover stories. I've lost track of time, bro. But help tee this up for us.
Yeah, so you're right. This is sort of one of the beats that we kind of keep coming to in our coverage, which is we look at the fallout and the companies, and we got to come back and talk about the science and the tech. Regeneron is really the subject of this story, and Bob and Susan have just been this amazing duo throughout this process. And we sat them down back when we could sit down together, and it feels like so long ago, Jason, to your point. And we said, what is the body of work that you guys want to be working on? And they basically just ticked through a bunch of ideas, and we said, go get it. And it turned out that Regeneron, of all of them, was actually sort of in our backyard here in New York. The company's based in Westchester. This is obviously a company that has just surged this year, top performing company year to date. And it's all in part because of these antibody treatments that they're developing. And Bob, why is that cause for hope?
Well, so basically, the reason is that this virus, this COVID, it's looking increasingly obvious, like it's not going away anytime soon. And we're really going to need to develop custom treatments against this. That is, drugs that are specifically designed to target this COVID, because the vaccine might take a while. And these antibodies that Regeneron is developing, those are likely to be some of the first custom-designed drugs that could come out against this coronavirus. And Regeneron, in particular, has been working on antibodies for a lot of diseases for a long time, but they've been, even though they don't sell any drugs for infections now, they've been quietly working on antibodies for various infections for a long time. And they had, literally a month or two before the coronavirus happened, they had the most successful trial in the history of Ebola treatment, and that was their antibody cocktail. Now they're trying to do the same, what they did with Ebola for the coronavirus, devise antibodies that would block the the key spike proteins in the top of the virus and basically neutralize the virus. And you could inject this in and use it either potentially as a treatment for sick patients or kind of as a prophylactic for like high-risk workers like doctors and nurses and people kind of going into the line of fire.
How difficult is it, Bob, to get to it? Like, in other words, to get finally an antibody treatment that actually works? We've got lots of folks working on it, but it sounds like that there's a fair amount of failure to be expected along the way.
Like anything in drug development, there's absolutely no guarantee it'll work. There could be, side effects that, they don't expect. But, there's absolutely no guarantee that, that's one reason why there's actually several companies working on it. So Regeneron's one doesn't work out. There's AstraZeneca, there's a company called Vera Biotechnology, Eli Lilly's working on it. So there's like several kind of efforts that are like semi-competing with the other parallel efforts. So there's like several kind of shots on goal is kind of what they call it. But there is reason to be hopeful that the antibody treatment, has a better odds of success than some other, treatments. And one reason is it does have this track record. It works against Ebola and some particularly tough viral diseases. And we quote in our story that had the former head of the FDA, Scott Gottlieb, saying, if I had to bet on any one drug treatment working out and being able to help, it would be some of these antibody drugs. So because the technology has really, increased amazingly in speed and specificity over the years.
And so,
and what would that look like?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Say you're able to, say that this proves, as promising as everyone sort of expects. How would Regeneron go about scaling it?
Yeah, so that is one definite question that we do raise in the story about the antibodies. And historically, antibodies are kind of niche drugs. They're very expensive specialty drugs for things like lung cancer and autoimmune diseases that are very expensive and used by, a small segment of the population. So definitely, if this works, this will definitely strain the manufacturing capacity. They were talking about by August maybe having the capacity to produce either 20,000 treatments a month or 200,000 like prophylactic treatments a month. So obviously, if this thing is still going strong, that's like almost like a drop in the bucket. And we also discussed in the story, there's like informal discussions among drug companies and nonprofits saying, hey, if your one works out but mine doesn't, like maybe we could all kind of combine our manufacturing capacity to be able to make more of it. So that's an absolutely key question, with any of this stuff, if it works, will they be able to make enough?
Well, and I do wonder about that sort of collaboration and competition and everything that normally happens in this world. How has that changed as you look across this entire industry, Bob?
Well, I mean, the different companies, as we look at it, are still, doing different efforts on antibodies and slightly different approaches. So a lot of different companies doing different things. What's new and what's different is there kind of is more of a spirit of like, keeping in touch with what would normally be your competitor and talk to them about, you're doing X and I'm doing Y and like how might we work together and, if we need to work together, we will. So there is kind of this feeling that, some companies, may need to donate kind of manufacturing capacity to whatever turns out to work, and not sit on it. If someone else's drug works but yours doesn't, you may need to kind of, donate your manufacturing capacity to the cause in some way and, not be worried about the fact that it's someone else's drug that's the one that turned out to work. And that's the kind of discussions that we're hearing are going on right now. Now, there's nothing specific into place because none of these things have worked yet, so we don't know. And so for the time being, it's good that, Regeneron has a lot of other companies are, working on similar type drugs. So you just can't predict which of these things is going to work till you test them.
So, and I do think about, we just talked with the CEO of Intercontinental Hotels, like thinking about, it will be steps. We hear it from our policymakers, Bob, steps in kind of getting us back to normal. And even if it's not a vaccine, this may be one of the things that starts to help communities. I think you end your story, help communities return to a semi-normal state until a vaccine is finally available. And just got about 30 seconds here. That's what the drug industry, like we need to be thinking, right? How do we take those steps? And the drug industry is crucial in all of this.
Right. So none of these drugs in development really will replace the ultimate need for a vaccine. But I think the idea is, and the thought we do end the story on, is that if you can get some treatment that kind of takes the edge off this a little bit, maybe, takes off the worst consequences or helps protect some of the key essential workers, then it'll be easier to kind of end some of the, or lessen some of the social distancing until that time when we finally get a vaccine.
All right. Thank you so much. This is a must read. I'll put it out on Twitter for everybody. It will also be in the magazine this week and on the terminal and at Bloomberg.com. Bob Langreth, healthcare reporter at Bloomberg News on the phone, along with Jill Weber, editor of Bloomberg Business Week magazine.
All right. For those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week is going to continue right here. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 up in Boston on an empty marathon Monday, Bay State Business, it's coming up next.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. They can help save lives by not having play dates. That's right. By replacing get-togethers with virtual play dates and video chats, they can help slow the evil spread of germs. And if your superheroes do go outside, make sure they continue their superhero wing by staying 6 feet away from others to protect everyone in America land. Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your 7th inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting 9 podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
on the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk, radio, and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
Wi-Fi connection spotty? Make sure you're never without something to listen to by offlining your podcasts on TuneIn. Just find your favorite podcast and tap the 3 dots to download the episodes you want to hear. When you're off the grid, you'll find all your offline audio under your favorites. In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading. We have got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. Lows of the day right now. Oil, though, the big story, oil futures collapsing to below zero for the first time ever as the deepening economic turmoil caused by the coronavirus crisis leaves traders desperate to avoid taking delivery of physical crude. The end of the May contract forces physical receipt at a time when storage capacity is low. June prices are below $23 a barrel. S&P 500 index low of the day now down 49 points, a drop of 1.7%. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 555 points. That is a drop right now of 2.3%. NASDAQ down 77, a decline there of 0.9%. 10 years up 5/30 seconds with a yield of 0.62%. Gold up 0.5% at $16.90 the ounce. So a down day on Wall Street. The chief U.S. economist at Morgan Stanley, Alan Zentner, says gross domestic product could drop by 50% in the second quarter. She was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
We feel we've captured it properly with a 38% Q-over-Q annualized decline in the second quarter, which would be the sharpest drop into recession on record. But have we gotten it properly negative enough? Is it negative 50%? It absolutely could be.
United Airlines holding shares tumbling today after the company said it expects to record a $2.1 billion loss in the first quarter as coronavirus all but erases air travel demand for the month of March. UAL down 5.5%, American Airlines down 5.2%, Delta down 3.6%, Southwest, which had been on the plus side, now lower by 1.1%. So again, recapping here, looking at a down day on Wall Street with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all trading lower. Lows of the day right now. S&P 500 index down 46, down 1.6%. Dow Jones Industrial Average lower now by 2.2%. NASDAQ down 0.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flat.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Let's head out to California now. Governor Gavin Newsom giving an update.
Which are on the phone today. But I've also been very blessed by someone that I know very well, and that's my wife, the first partner of the state of California. She, in partnership with Tony Thurman, Linda Darling-Hammond, members of my team, Ben Cheetah and others, have been working hard over the last few weeks to build on the announcement we made a few weeks ago about those 100,000 free Wi-Fi hotspots that Google has committed to rolling out throughout the state of California, and the 4,000 Chromebooks that they made available, to build on the work that Apple has been doing in 800 school districts, 10,000 iPods that they have donated, and to do even more to meet the needs of millions of Californians that simply don't have access. Jen has been working the phones. She's had good days, like some of us. Some days haven't been as fruitful. Companies, large and small, individuals that have made small contributions, some large, and philanthropy and foundations, and a whole package that we wanted to roll out today that I think will shine a brighter light on our capacity to deliver, and moreover, I think reinforce the need, certainly, to do more. So with that in mind, let me introduce the first partner of the state of California, Jen Siebel Newsom.
All right, you've been listening to California Governor Gavin Newsom handing the mic over to his wife, the first partner of the state, working on a number of different initiatives there. This clearly is an all-hands situation, to say the least, across the country, and certainly there in California, where, fair to say, Governor Gavin Newsom getting some pretty high marks for his handling of this crisis, Carol.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been following, certainly, what he has to say and how they're planning to get that huge economy, so important to the United States, back on track. We're following that. We're also following big time the energy markets. And we do want to, in Business Week Economics at this hour, take a look at oil. An ounce of gold has never bought more barrels of crude in history. That fun fact coming from the Bloomberg, courtesy of Charlie Pellet. Let's talk about what's going on in the energy markets. Ellen Wald, certainly well known to our Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Business Week Radio audience, president of Transversal Consulting, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Global Energy Center. She wrote the book Saudi Inc. on the history of Aramco and Saudi Arabia. She joins us on the phone from Jacksonville, Florida. Ellen, nice to have you here with us. I hope you're doing well and your family doing okay, staying safe.
Yes, we're all good here.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I do wonder, you know, we kicked off our show saying, you know, a penny for a barrel of oil. Like, you can't even get your head around that. Explain to me what is going on. Explain to our audience what's going on in the energy market right now. Is it all about just oversupply here?
Well, when the show started, it was a penny for a barrel of oil, and now the price has actually turned negative. But it's important to understand what we're actually talking about, because it's a big headline, oil prices turn negative. But what we're talking about very specifically is the price on WTI, which is the U.S. benchmark, West Texas International, the price for that contract that expires in May, and that contract expires tomorrow. So this is really the last day for trading on that particular oil for delivery in May. And so what this says is basically that everyone who wanted to buy oil for May bought that oil and they don't want to buy any more of it. There's been fairly small trade volume in terms of trading oil on that May contract. If you look, in fact, at the June contract for WTI, it's actually much higher. It's in the 20s. Not that that's a very high price, but it's much higher than a penny or negative prices. And there's much more volume on that contract. So as a result, the price for these May contracts just kept falling until it went negative. Now, does that mean that someone will pay you to buy oil? Not really. That's not really what it means, but essentially it means no one is interested in buying oil in the month of May or for the month of May, and also that there's very little storage capacity left to store that oil, because there have always been people out there who will buy oil and then store it in the hopes that they can sell it later for more money. And so the problem we're seeing is that demand for oil has dropped so precipitously, so fast and so much that we're running out of places to store that oil. And so that's how you get in these situations like this one, where just at the end of that contract, it went negative.
And so what's interesting, Ellen, is as we look out, the oil futures market actually paints a picture of an economy that looks a little better by the end of the year. You get to sort of November-ish time frame, and things seem a lot more rational. Keep me honest. Is that true? And how do we look at that as a barometer for the larger economy here?
Yeah, well, if you look at the contracts for WTI for November right now, or at least I'm looking at them a bit, an hour or two behind, but they're much higher. They're in the 30s. Now that's not all that great,
right?
For oil companies, but it's much better than what we're looking at for next month. And so that does say that at least in the longer term, we're looking at a growth in demand. Unless, and I think that could change because there's not a whole lot of buying and selling. There's not a whole lot of volume on those contracts, but what they're going for now certainly says that demand should be higher.
Ellen, just got about 40 seconds left here. In terms of the longer play here, there's talk about support for the American energy industry and certainly some of the shale players. Should that be done, or do you think we need to let the markets play their forces and kind of let it find where it should be settling on its own? Let market forces basically win here. And just about 25 seconds.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure for that, and there's a lot of pressure for that to happen. I think that it's not clear that anything that they can do will actually save jobs, and that it's probably best, and I do think the consensus now is that you've got to just let the market take its course.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. Really good to catch up with you, Ellen Wald. We were trying to sort of figure out our show today. Carol, you were the first to be like, let's just get Ellen Wald. She'll make sense of it all for us. And she did. We really appreciate it. President of Transversal Consulting, also a Bloomberg opinion contributor, which is part of the reason we know she's so smart. Let's get over to Bob Moon. He's got a world of national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, thank you. Never has that WTI quote on the Bloomberg terminal looked so odd. In the past hour, it read minus $37.63 a barrel. WTI futures for May trading in negative territory for the first time ever, reflecting how desperate traders have become to avoid taking delivery of physical crude and showing just how oversupplied the U.S. market is. Today's plunge has broken every low for oil prices since 1946. With a bipartisan deal for more emergency federal spending not quite nailed down, the U.S. Senate met in a brief session and scheduled another one tomorrow in case the bill is ready. One of the things they talked about, suppose your source for information, your local newspaper, TV, or radio station, shut down right now. Not a good time? Here's Bloomberg's Irv Chapman.
One senator took the floor to propose that companies that run local news media be made eligible for federal money. Maria Cantwell of Washington State.
These are the people who are on the front line of delivering the information to us about this crisis, and they are helping to build a community of truth and transparency. We need to help them during this crisis.
Senator Cantwell noted that without advertising revenue, numbers of reporters have been laid off all over the country when numbers of readers, listeners, and viewers are soaring. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
A ray of hope today as New York's daily death rate falls below 500, and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says the Empire State may be starting to descend from its peak. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
When you follow the facts,
Bloomberg's been reporting on this intelligence community report.
When you seek out the experts,
the investment banks that Bloomberg speak to also want some relief.
No matter what else is happening,
it's been pretty hard to read the signals.
At least you know what's real.
The economic fallout from the virus risks becoming entrenched.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team? Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
To protect her home and family in a disaster, Karen was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Are you in? Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Typical Danny. Last night I was chilling with my girls, but ended up spilling my Chardonnay all over my fave lilac nightie when I saw the photo I was tagged in. State of my fake tan. But no worries. Just one wash and my clothes will smell perf with Surf. Surf gives you long-lasting fragrance with natural essential oils. Find your fragrance in Surf's laundry range.
This is a message from the government. Coronavirus is a national emergency, life-threatening for people of all ages everywhere in the UK. To help save lives, stay home. Only go outside for food, health reasons, daily exercise, or to work, but only if you cannot work from home. Stay home. Anyone can get it, and anyone can spread it. Coronavirus. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
At Lloyds Bank, we're here to help you when you need it most. So here are some ways we're helping you manage your money. We won't charge interest on the first £500 of an arranged overdraft. You can apply for a payment holiday on credit cards, loans, and mortgages. And we'll also give you emergency access to savings in fixed-term accounts without charge. Lloyds Bank, now more than ever, we're by your side. Visit our website for terms and conditions.
Stay in touch with your loved ones with great phones at great prices from Tesco Mobile. Like the incredible iPhone 7 with advanced HD front camera. Perfect for video calling. For just $13.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 14th of June. Was £15.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phased policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
TuneIn makes it easy to be a part of the conversation. Just make sure push notifications are enabled to hear about breaking news and trending topics from around the sports world. You'll also get custom recommendations of podcasts and radio stations covering the sports and teams you care about. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is, we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of active
Round the Bases with the StatCast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one, not only.
Catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all lower. In fact, we are bouncing along the bottom on this back-to-work Monday. We've got crude oil, West Texas Intermediate, with a negative handle. Let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. That's right. U.S. stocks under pressure amid the plunge in oil. Dow's currently down 568 points. S&P's dropped 48. NASDAQ is lower by 72. Note the S&P 500 fell back below its 50-day moving average. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.62%. You mentioned oil. WTI crude futures traded at a negative price for the first time. Small caps are down 2.7%. Transports sink 4%. Semis are under pressure, down 2%, and the VIX is higher by 12%. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, J&J and Verizon, while Boeing and Dow Inc. led to the downside. After earnings, Halliburton was little changed, and wrapping things up, IBM reports after the bell. Live from the first breaking news desk on Bill Maloney. Charlie?
All right, we thank you very much, Bill. We'll have those IBM numbers as they break into here live. Breaking news over your Bloomberg type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Masser here with you on a Monday afternoon. And as we look around the world, as we often do, we look to China and we look to one man to help us figure it all out. It's a big task, but man, he keeps proving up to it. Right, Carol?
Totally.
He's our guy. He's our guy. Andy Brown. He is the editorial director of Bloomberg New Economy.
Well, we'll see. We're bringing him in now.
Yeah,
so
a little pressure here. But a really fascinating column today, Andy, that we were reading because you take us back to 91 when you moved to Beijing, a very different time to say the least. And yet a lot of people have been pointing back to that period because it was a little bit of a dark time, sort of like we're in now, and what came after was pretty remarkable.
Right. Yeah. The reason I refer back to this is, as you say, I moved to Beijing in 1991. This was 2 years after the People's Liberation Army had put down the Tiananmen Square pro-democracy protests, and the conventional wisdom at that time among journalists and analysts was that China had set back its economic development by at least a generation, and the foreign business community, much of the foreign business community had fled. I mean, the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, had drilled machine gun holes in one of the biggest hotels in Beijing, the China World Hotel, and some of the, at least one of the foreign diplomatic compounds where we ended up living. And, American executives and their families were cowering in Hong Kong and Manila and elsewhere. And who knew, right at that moment, China was on the cusp of the greatest economic expansion in history. And it just skipped through from that moment, pretty much every adversity that the world threw at it. From the Asian financial crisis in the late 1990s to SARS, the Great Recession in 2008 didn't slow down China one bit. But finally, this juggernaut has met its match in COVID-19, and this economy is shrinking. It really is a historic moment.
And yet, you're right. So, like we know, this virus has, Andy, upended kind of all of our projections about global growth, and certainly in terms of China's ambitions and their goals. And yet, you're right that even so this has happened, we could see the pandemic speed China, along with the rest of Asia, their rise. Put that together for us.
Yeah, so by and large, the economies of East Asia have responded to coronavirus much better than economies in the West. So we know about the early Chinese missteps and cover-ups and blunderings and the suppression of doctors and journalists who were warning about this. But it's sort of recovered and it's reopening, and South Korea and Taiwan and Singapore and Hong Kong, a number of these East Asian economies have come through. They've shown that they have competent, coordinated governments, that they embrace technology, particularly technologies that allow them to track and trace infections. They're nimble, they're agile, they're dynamic, like Asian companies. And it's hard not to come to the conclusion that, at the New Economy Forum, we've always had a sense that we've always acknowledged the center of gravity of the global economy is moving east.
Right.
And it just seems as though this coronavirus has accelerated that trend.
And so, Andy, when you think about what that acceleration looks like and the trajectory of it, what is it, not to be too parochial here, but what does it mean for the United States?
Yeah, to me, this is still all to play for. There are a lot of people who talk about the inevitability of a China century or, an Asian century. I'm not quite buying it. And it's interesting when quite often from the outside, outside of China, people looking in, they make China up to be this unstoppable juggernaut, but when you actually live there, you become acutely aware of the monumental challenges and problems, environment, demographic, and governance, and so on. And the opposite is true in America. Often people make the mistake of thinking that the United States is on this sort of inevitable trajectory, sunset trajectory. And then when you live here, you become aware of America's colossal advantages. I mean, from its deep pools of capital to the best higher education in the world, the environment. I'm looking out right now over one of the most pristine bodies of water in the world, which is Lake Sunapee in New Hampshire, and China doesn't have a body of water anywhere close to this. So, you know, the issue really is how the West responds to this pandemic. Does it use it as an opportunity to renew, to rejuvenate, or not?
Well, like, I think about how I'm using this time to reset some things in my life, and I do wonder exactly what you're saying, Andy, of whether or not the United States and Europe use it as a reset for themselves. Jason,
well,
you're smiling.
As Carol Massar goes, so goes China. So,
Stop it. Andy Brown is the best of Bloomberg New Economy. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Oil fell below zero for the first time ever as demand collapses. Traders were in a bind as the May futures contract expired, not wanting to get stuck owning crude with nowhere to store it, with tanks nearing their limits. May crude settled at minus $37.63 a barrel. The June futures contract closed lower, but was still positive at just over $20. Stocks remain sharply lower. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is leading the retreat, down 584. The S&P 500 down 50. The Nasdaq Composite down 81. Walmart is abandoning its hopes of becoming a giant in online video. It agreed to sell the streaming service Vudu to Fandango. Terms were not disclosed. Your car isn't worth nearly what it was a month ago. Auto auctioneer Manheim says wholesale car prices fell nearly 12% in the first half of April. It's a decline that will easily set a record if it holds for the full month. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is a message from the government. Coronavirus is a national emergency, life-threatening for people of all ages everywhere in the UK. To help save lives, stay home. Only go outside for food, health reasons, daily exercise, or to work, but only if you cannot work from home. Stay home. Anyone can get it, and anyone can spread it. Coronavirus. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Right now at the Halifax, wherever we're working from,
we're all working together to be there for you.
So our customers can apply for a payment holiday on mortgages, loans or credit cards.
And because we want you to stay home and stay safe,
we've created step-by-step guides to help you set up online and mobile banking,
which is safer and easier than you may think.
But for those that really need to see us in person, we're keeping as many branches open as possible.
So however you need us at the Halifax,
we're here to help.
Terms and conditions apply. For more information, go to halifax.co.uk.
Stay in touch with your loved ones with great phones at great prices from Tesco Mobile. Like the incredible iPhone 7 with advanced HD front camera. Perfect for video calling. For just $13.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 14th of June. Was £15.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip 3, have a game night. In fact, why not make it a game day? Whether you're quarantined with kids or roommates, nothing passes the time like a game of cards, Pictionary, charades, dominoes, or Never Have I Ever. If you've got the hardware, break out the video game console and enjoy hours of guilt-free gaming. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen From Home on TuneIn.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
The
2020 NFL Draft is on ESPN Radio on TuneIn. Starting Thursday, April 23rd, ESPN Radio has you covered with live coverage, discussions, and analysis of every pick from every round. Be there when the future stars of the NFL find their home and when your team selects the players that will shape their future for seasons to come. Don't miss the biggest event of the offseason with ESPN Radio on TuneIn.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course, Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Coming up, we're going to have Dave Wilson's chart of the day. It's all about volatility. We've had some experience with that. Then we're going to drive to the close. Later on, we're going to catch up with the owner of 11 Madison Park, the CEO of Pittsburgh's airport. A lot to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to where we are and how we get out of this. All right, let's get another check on your top business stories and update on the trading day. We've been kind of bouncing around here, Charlie Pellet.
28 minutes to go, Carol Massar. Happy Monday to you both, by the way. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all declining. Governor Newsom delivering his daily briefing says California virus deaths have risen by 42 from yesterday, now stand at 1,208. In California, virus hospitalizations up by 1.9%. Bottom line, losing day for the U.S. stock market today. Stocks falling from a 6-week high. Investors on edge as oil futures plunge to unprecedented levels. I'm talking negative numbers on West Texas Intermediate crude. An absolutely unprecedented wipeout. Sellers now actually paying buyers to take the stuff off their hands. Gold up 0.7% higher by $11 the ounce at $16.94. The 10-year up 6/32, the yield there 0.62%. S&P down 40, a drop of 1.4%. The Dow down 500 points now, lower by 2.1%. NASDAQ bouncing along the bottom close to the low of the day, down 53, a drop there of 0.6%. Well, lots of questions about the coronavirus pandemic and if there's a glimmer of hope in flattening the curve. Dr. Joshua Sharfstein is Vice Dean of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
Well, what we have seen recently in the United States is a plateau, and that is good news because we clearly were worried about having so many people with severe disease from COVID that it would overwhelm the healthcare system.
And again, the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all lower. And should mention the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Shake Shack's going to return a $10 million loan from the U.S. government amid criticism that the publicly traded burger chain and other large companies gobbled up the emergency funding while smaller businesses were frozen out. Shake Shack shares, they're up today by 5.1% right now at $45.70. Again, recapping negative oil prices. We've got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all lower. S&P down 40, a drop there of 1.4%. IBM will report after the closing bell. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Shaking all over.
Wasn't awake.
Yeah, I'm up.
I'm up.
Mom, I'm up.
Mom, problem. Totally. Dave Wilson is with us, Bloomberg stocks editor, with his chart of the day. Who was that?
Yes.
No way.
Yes.
Newer yes? Or old yes?
No, Who. It was the Who.
There you go.
Oh, got
You
it.
said who was it, and you said
got
yes.
it. I was thinking yes, the band yes. I'm like, really? Okay.
You're like, I listened to some yes
Who's
back
on
in the
first?
day.
What's on second? I don't know who's on third.
Exactly.
Oh, my God.
All right, Dave Wilson. We're all awake here on a Monday, thanks to our engineer, Reggie, who, maybe he knew we needed a little kick there, Carol.
You certainly got one, that's for sure.
We got it.
Totally.
We got it. Shake it all over. Is that a little volatility reference?
Exactly. Smaller turns shakier. That's the headline of today's chart. It's all about a comparison of volatility indexes. Now, we talk about the VIX day in and day out based on the value of S&P 500 options. Well, there's a similar gauge for the Russell 2000. The ticker on that one is RVX. And what's happened is you've seen a gap open up between the RVX and the VIX as volatility overall has come down. So what's resulted from that is that the RVX is higher than the VIX by the widest margin ever. Now, ever goes back to the early 2000s when the Russell, got this index, this RVX. So, that's something that really stands out because, we've seen smaller companies failing to keep pace with larger ones for a while in the stock market. And so now you've got sort of a fear factor built in terms of this volatility comparison. And Julian Emanuel over at BTIG, who's their head of equity and derivative strategy, pointed this out last week in a report. And the way he saw it, it's basically the effect of the coronavirus, how it's playing out with smaller companies that's being reflected in this widening gap, that they basically have more to lose in a lot of cases. So that's the relationship. And, the previous record goes back to 2009, right around the time that the bull market was starting back then. So, we're talking about a real shift here. And if you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
The bull market.
On a logical level, though, it makes sense, right, Dave? Because smaller companies are going to be more vulnerable. They don't have necessarily the different conduits or financial conduits that they can tap into, right? For
or
funds,
the safety net,
right? Or the safety net. So it kind of makes sense that these guys are potentially much more vulnerable.
Or potentially the cash on hand, or the breadth of business, or any of the sort of what you might call mitigating factors that would come into play with larger companies. So, that's how it's played out. And we've certainly seen, the small caps, the Russell 2000 has kept up with the S&P 500 for a while. And so now you're introducing even more risk.
Did you see the TV benefit over the weekend?
Bits and pieces. That's
the Global
about
Citizen
it.
thing.
Global Citizens, yeah. I was just curious. I thought the Stones playing, man.
That was cool.
Was so cool.
Lady Gaga.
Air drums.
I did see some of that.
Yeah, that was kind of one of my favorites. I was just curious, Dave.
Okay.
Carol needs another dose of the Who to maybe jolt her into being a little more lively for the balance of the show.
You watched a
little bit. I actually caught little clips on Twitter here and there.
Yeah.
I didn't sit and watch.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, part because I really wanted to be outside. There was like on.
It was at night, Jason. It was 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night.
Was it?
Were you still out?
No, it was like 8 hours.
No.
There was the TV show, and then there was the online version. The online version went 8 hours.
Yeah, I just watched the couple of hours at night.
You were just watching on the TV?
I was on the old TV.
On the TV. All right, Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Dave.
We will talk to you just after the close of trading for your stock of the day. Always appreciate Dave's insights. And coming up, we are going to get you to the close. Stocks sort of have taken a leg down since we started the show. They were flirting with their highs of the day, and now down on the lower tier, as they say.
All right, let's get a check on world and national news headlines. Back over to Bob when we go. Hey, Bob.
Hi, Carol. Thank you. The pressure builds to get the United States back to work. With some states seeing politically motivated public protests, which President Trump is seeking to use to his advantage, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says as people try to claim the idea as their own, he shares the sentiment. But so do we all.
Nobody disagrees that we want to get out of this situation. Nobody. You don't need protests to convince anyone in this country that we have to get back to work and we have to get the economy going and we have to get out of our homes.
Just be smart, incremental, and safe, Cuomo says, and realistic.
There's a sanity quotient to this whole situation. There's only so long you can say to people, stay in the house and lock the door.
Boeing and a small number of other manufacturers around the U.S. are gearing up today to resume production amid pressure from President Trump and resistance from governors who warn there's not enough testing yet to keep the coronavirus from rebounding. Indeed, there's a stark warning today from the head of the World Health Organization about the coronavirus. Speaking at a news conference in Geneva, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said ominously, "Trust us, the worst is yet ahead of us."
Let's prevent this tragedy. It's a virus that many people still don't understand.
The WHO leader said lockdowns alone will not end the pandemic. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 6.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
I'm Mel Kiper Jr., and to get you ready for the NFL Draft, you can listen to my podcast, First Draft, as Todd McShay, Chris Sproul, and I highlight all the top picks and give you the analysis you need leading up to the draft. Just search ESPN Radio today.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
A
social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
The NHL is always on the ice with these awesome hockey podcasts on TuneIn. Get your goal with the Spittin' Chicklets podcast.
Brian Yandel, Keith Yandel, thanks for coming on. What's going on?
Nothing much. Glad to be here. You guys got some nice digs here.
We heard you took Southwest 2-stop flight to get out here.
Yeah, well, you know, I just...
Carve up the ice with NHL at the rink.
The other day I wrote a story. Artemi Panarin, Semyon Varlamov, Sergei Bobrovsky, they all helped arrange for the purchase of N95 masks to benefit hospitals in their respective markets. This is another one of those positive stories you're seeing.
Or create your own power play with Locked On NHL.
All these teams invested future assets to take a run at the Stanley Cup right now. Like, all of those teams would have a real serious gripe, like trading these multiple first-round picks to make a run at a cup. You're right.
Discover these and more NHL podcasts right here on TuneIn. Hit the court anytime with these great NBA podcasts on TuneIn. The Low Post.
So what struck you about this potential head-to-head matchup? What did we learn now that Zion is involved and LeBron and Zion go at each other for the first time?
You know, I still think both teams have to figure out kind of who are their guys when they get into a fourth quarter. I think you saw that with both of them. There were some kind of odd moments.
The Ringer NBA Show.
Who ended up winning the thing. But I did watch for a little bit when it was DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine playing against each other. And then as the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Haber Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in the front office, and you know, when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I jumped high school here in New York
Find these and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Stocks falling from a 6-week high. Investors on edge as oil futures plunge to unprecedented levels. And a spate of corporate earnings on tap. IBM after the closing bell. NYMEX WTI crude May futures settled at minus 37.63 a barrel. They're paying you to take away the oil. We've got the S&P down 42, a drop of 1.5%. The Dow down 514, a drop of 2.1%. NASDAQ down 63, that is a drop of 0.7%. 10-year up 7/30 seconds with a yield of 0.61%. Gold up 0.8% right now, $16.95 the ounce. Again, recapping equities lower here with the S&P down 43, a drop of 1.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for the drive to the close. Just about 11 minutes left in the trading day. Jeff Kruppelman is back with us, a friend of the show, chief investment strategist and head of equities at Marine Wealth Advisors. He joins us on the phone from Cincinnati, and that's exactly where the company is based. Jeff, nice to have you here again with us. How are you doing?
I think like everybody else, staying safe and kind of staying, I think, poised and focused and doing the best that we can, but doing well. How about you?
Doing okay. I mean, I agree. I think Jason would agree as well. We've all kind of gotten into a new rhythm, a new world order, if you will. What's going on in Cincinnati? Give us a little bit of the lay of the land and how people are doing generally and what's going on.
Well, we've been blessed to have a governor that kind of has led and gotten way ahead of this. And so we've been social distancing like everybody else. And, we're working mostly from homes right now. And as I talk to local hospital and healthcare executives, I can tell you just, anecdotally, I get kind of word and feedback like we were building, to triple or more than that our ICU capacity, and we're finding that we're only having to do a fraction of that, and that, we were looking to have to build out capacity that would be temporary and maybe at other sites, and that we just don't see that happening right now. So this idea of bending the curve and doing what we need to do, and having a governor that has been very, very much a leader, I think, nationally, in just saying, hey, we've got to get in front of this and, make sure that we don't stop it from spreading more than it should. So I think, Ohio, Cincinnati, we're trying to do our part.
Yeah, pretty interesting, right? I mean, to see how, and we've talked about this a ton on this show, Jeff, just sort of how governors have really had to step to the fore. And, Mike DeWine, your governor, it was not easy for him early on because he was a little bit, as you say, sort of out there on his own to some extent.
Yeah, and it sounds like, there's pressure now being put on the governors. And I think that, this whole kind of dialogue about when do we reopen, how does that take place, there's a lot of execution risk that's involved in doing that. And so, as you know, we've been cautiously optimistic here throughout. We unlike previous periods where we were outrageously bullish on the market back in 2018, when everyone else was pretty negative, it was, for us, relatively easy to do that because you could go to the data, and the data was good while the mood was negative and valuation was great. Here you've got horrible data if you look at the economy near term, but you have kind of, the cavalry to the rescue here, doing the right things on the stimulus front to get us through the gap, and you have the coronavirus kind of curve being bent. We want to see improvement there, but that keeps you positive longer term that this will be transitory. But I got to tell you, short term, there's a lot of execution risk. So unlike that previous period when we were, hey, buy on the dips, get after this, it's a wonderful moment, we're more thoughtful in saying hold your ground, trade up where you can into higher quality stocks for now. But it looks like if we manage this like we think we can, that over the next 12 months, we will be at a much better place.
So, we love talking about names. So tell us where you're trading up. Give us some examples of what you might be shedding and what you might be picking up.
Sure. And, it's funny because sometimes when you do this, people, they'll question, they'll say, why in the world did you do that? I mean, that just feels like moving dirt, Jeff.
I like that. But, moving dirt. That's going to stay with us.
Yeah, move that dirt pile. But to us, it was thoughtful and we hope, smart and successful. So an example within consumer discretionary where, you've had a lot of pressure, the retailers under a lot of pressure. We recently sold Best Buy in our flagship strategy, and we bought Target. Why did we do that? Well, I recently moved, and I had a wall mount, a 65-inch screen TV, and I got to tell you, I wanted an installer to do that next time. And, it's a thoughtful electronic kind of, purchase where you want to go in and you want to test drive these things and see it. So Target, on the other hand, is selling consumables and staples to a large extent, product categories that are selling off the shelves like, hotcakes, and nice dividend yield, nice balance sheet, good management. So we just think that it's over the next 3 to 6 months in a much better, part of the curve there. Another example of a trade we did was selling some oil stocks. We sold some EOG. We sold onsemi, which is a auto-related semiconductor stock, very tethered to the auto industry, which is highly cyclical, as you know. And we bought Qualcomm with those proceeds, tethered to 5G, probably a beneficiary of what's going on as we do much more online over time. And again, a beautiful dividend, strong and strengthening balance sheet, as they pay off some acquisitions that they've done in the past, and just we think at a better center than auto related at this time. So those are some of the examples, and I can tell you on the sell side, we did come out of Carnival Cruise and came out of Marriott and Las Vegas Sands in anticipation of what this could mean.
Jeff, when did you do that? When did you do that? How early did you do that play?
I got to tell you, sometimes what they say it's good to be good, but it's also good to be lucky also. And if you can be both, it's great. So some of those things like Carnival, we were just really disappointed on their execution starting late last year. Mm-hmm. Wow. And someone might say, "Oh, so Jeff, you saw coronavirus coming, huh?" Mm-hmm. And the answer is absolutely not. But we did feel we were ripe for some type of correction or pullback near term that would set the stage for a nice advance going forward. And so we thought, names like Carnival, if you did get into a little slow patch, you had a correction that, maybe that would be an area within consumer discretionary, some misexecution that you want to move away from. So some of these things, we bought gold late last year, GLD, also in anticipation of, early in the year we had Iran and, some nuclear concerns and whatnot, some geopolitical concerns. And so we were looking at maybe some stocks or exposure that would do well in rising global uncertainty. So we thought about early, and then we just continued that, and that's our team continued it through the period.
Right. Well, got to say, we appreciate always catching up with you, Jeff, and glad to hear that you are safe and sound. And I got to say, thoughtful. I also appreciate his honesty about calls and things, and just being so frank about things. It's just refreshing, to say the least.
Performance proves it. All right, Jeff Crumpleman, thank you so much. Chief Investment Strategist, Head of Equities, one of our faves, out at Mariner Wealth Advisors, on the phone from Cincinnati. This is Bloomberg.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
This is a message from the government. Coronavirus is a national emergency, life-threatening for people of all ages everywhere in the UK. To help save lives, stay home. Only go outside for food, health reasons, daily exercise, or to work, but only if you cannot work from home. Stay home. Anyone can get it, and anyone can spread it. Coronavirus. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Stay in touch with your loved ones with great phones at great prices from Tesco Mobile. Like the incredible iPhone 7 with advanced HD front camera. Perfect for video calling. For just $13.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 14th of June. Was £15.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. There you have it, sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange as we wrap up trading on this 4/20 day, April 20th, 2020. Mark Castellanovo, the supervisor of facilities at the NYSE, all alone there, ringing that closing bell. The Dow, the S&P, and
and NASDAQ all having a down day, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average at the close down 595 points. That was a drop today of just about 2.5%. S&P 500 index down 51, a drop there of 1.8%. NASDAQ slumped 89 points, a decline there of 1%. Should mention that we are awaiting the latest numbers out of IBM. We'll have those for you as they become available. S&P 500 index halting a 2-day gain. Dow Jones Industrial Average, again, lower today by 2.5%. As for the overall mood of the market, Jeff Krumpelman is Chief Investment Strategist at Mariner Wealth Advisors. He was our guest moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
Unlike that previous period when we were, hey, buy on the dips, get after this, it's a wonderful moment, we're more thoughtful in saying hold your ground, trade up where you can into higher quality stocks for now, but it looks like if we manage this like we think we can, that over the next 12 months, we will be at a much better place.
Oil, a major story today. NYMEX West Texas Intermediate Crude May futures settling at minus 37.63 a barrel. Oil plunging as a deadly pandemic ravaging global economies threatens to erase an entire decade of demand growth. Among some of the oil majors today, ExxonMobil plunging 5.1%, Chevron down 4.6%, ConocoPhillips lower today by 2.1%. 10-year yield 0.61%, gold up 0.8%. Recapping equities lower here, S&P 500 index down 51, a drop of 1.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Move around. Motion creates the motion.
I feel the earth move under my feet.
You move like they do. I've never seen anyone move that fast.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Company's called Movers and Shakers. They cost a little more, but that name cracked me up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
It is time to take a look at some of the movers and shakers. Before we do that, though, and so key to the markets and what happens over the next few weeks, few months, is what's happening with the pandemic. We did have a headline. U.S. COVID-19 cases rise 2.7%. That's below 4.5% average that we've seen of the past week. And this certainly plays into what we've talked about, Jason. We've heard it from the governors about cases plateauing.
Yep.
And this is what you want to see. We could stay here, though, for a while. And that's, I think, some of the words of caution that we keep hearing, right?
Well, that's exactly right. And I think it varies pretty dramatically from state to state. I mean, it's interesting, we were talking to Jeff Krumpelman just a few minutes ago, and he was rightly saying that Ohio Governor Mike DeWine has gotten, a lot of kudos for being early. Meanwhile, I was just reading the New York Times, an Ohio prison is now the largest reported source of virus infections in the U.S. So you still have parts of the country where the outbreak is growing, maybe here in the tri-state area, since we have been dealing with it and dealing with it at scale for so long, we are starting to see some of the flattening. And certainly if you look at the graphs that Governor Andrew Cuomo was showing earlier in the day, that's the sense you get. But this is not a consistent national thing. And so while those big numbers or increasingly not as big numbers are important, sort of case by case, state by state, even region, city, county, all of those things really varies depending on where you are.
Right. And the point is, even if you get on the other side of the slope, right, you're still seeing cases. And so, you really want it. You want a day where you wake up and there's no new cases.
Right.
Basically, and we're not quite at that, to say the least. All right, let's talk about big numbers and what we saw in terms of the market trends today. S&P 500, Charlie breaking down those closing numbers. Increasingly, it was a down day. 428 names in the S&P 500 lower today, 76 higher, 1 unchanged. In terms of those major industry groups, we talked about all of them being down for the day overall. The best performer, healthcare names, but still down about 0.2%. Bottom of the pack, energy, real estate, utilities for the day overall. Worst performer, Jason, they were down 3.7%.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about a few names. It was interesting to hear, Jeff Crumpleman talk about that whole upgrade cycle. And as you rightly said while we were talking to him, I'm definitely going to use the phrase, we just moving dirt here. I mean, that is fantastic. But, the point he was making, which totally makes sense when you think about it, is you probably, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense to have Best Buy right now, given that people aren't saying, hey, let's go look at some new TVs or refrigerators. They may be buying a new TV, but they're probably buying it online. And at the same time, we know people are, if they do have to get out and go and shop, they are shopping at places like Target. So interesting to hear that. The other thing we know people are doing, Netflix. It's happening. It's happening in our house. I'm guessing it's happening in yours as well.
Let's talk about it. It's your fourth biggest gainer in the S&P 500. It's up 3.4%. It is up 35% so far this year, and it has no doubt about it been one of the standouts in terms of the market this year, and it all has to do with just seeing a lot more streaming. Let's point out, though, we did see a little bit of a give back. I think it was either on Friday or a little bit last week because concerns about, all right, as we get on the other side of this, people aren't going to be streaming as much. And the point is, we're going to get earnings tomorrow after the closing bell. So it will be a reality check in terms of how far Netflix has come and what they're seeing about the outlook, certainly life after virus.
I think that's going to be the key thing with everybody, right, is what they're seeing, what they're saying. I mean, clearly they had a big hit in Tiger King. This is a hit business in many ways. You're nodding your head. No one.
I watched a little bit of there was a new episode about like kind of interviews with all the key players and what they thought about the series. Basically, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's take a quick look at volatility if we can. We heard a little bit earlier that it was up and it remained up. Let's see exactly where it closed. Closed up 14%. So up above 40, closing at 43.44. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave! Who? Dave!
Hey, Mr. Wilson. Dave Wilson back with us with his Stock of the Day. What you got?
I've got Excelsis, Jason. It's a developer of cancer treatments. The company's biggest seller is a kidney cancer drug known as Cabometyx. There's also a thyroid cancer medicine called Cometric. Excelsis has been around since 1994, and it's been publicly traded since 2000. The ticker is EXEL. Now, the share surged and plunged in their first year of trading and then languished until Cabometyx first won U.S. clearance in 2016. Now, Excelsis has received more U.S. approvals since then, yet the clearances only apply to kidney cancer patients who have tried other medicines without success. Excelsis has been working with Bristol Myers Squibb since 2017 on what's called a first-line therapy for people who haven't been treated before. Today, initial study results were released on a combination of Cabometyx with the Bristol Myers cancer drug Opdivo. The data showed the medications work better in tandem than a Pfizer drug called Sutent, and that was enough to send Excelsis' shares up more than 21% in today's trading. That was the biggest gain for the stock since July 2015.
All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We do want to mention IBM crossing the Bloomberg terminal. Stock's down between 1% and 2% here in the after hours. It's bouncing around a little bit. Company saying first quarter revenue falls 3.4% year over year. It's withdrawing its full year forecast, which is something we know we have heard from a lot of different companies. They did talk about their cloud revenue, which I think is important. First quarter total cloud revenue, $5.4 billion. That was up 19% year over year. We're going to check in with our own Bloomberg intelligence team to kind of put these numbers in perspective, because we do see more people are on the cloud, so we want to see what that has to say, but not surprised to see that full year forecast reined in.
Well, it's that Red Hat acquisition, continuing to figure out how that plays into this new world order. Meantime, Governor Ned Lamont of Connecticut giving some remarks. Let's take you there now.
See, there we definitely have bent the curve on the way down, hit the apex. I think we feel fairly confident about that. We're maybe 10 days behind New York City, a week behind New York City. Next line there is New Haven. They're maybe 10 days or so behind Fairfield County. That line is flattening out. You see, we have good capacity in those hospitals. and they're able to help out Hartford a little bit. The blue line at the bottom, Hartford is still picking up, and that created small increase overall in our hospitalizations. This chart again, hospitalizations is the lead metric we can tell for how we're doing, but I'm going to give you some new metrics in a few minutes. But the 3-day moving average is down. That is good news. That says that we have good capacity in our hospitals, and the degree to which hospitalization tells us something about the overall infection rate. That's a good trend line. But we're not out of the woods. And I just wanted to put this chart on here to remind you that these countries were all 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks in front of the United States in terms of getting hit with this pandemic. We could learn a lot from their responses, and we can also learn a lot from what they didn't do right. Each and every one of them thought that they had this crisis under control. They loosened up on their social distancing, and each and every one of them now has seen an increase in COVID-related infections again. So we're going to monitor this very carefully. What I really would like to do, if I could, is give you an idea of what more we can do as we prepare for our May 20th date. You know, every week now, every Thursday, you're going to hear from our Reopen Connecticut team. And what happens between now and May 20th that gives us more information that allows us to make the right decisions so we can slowly, on a phased basis, reopen our state and do that very safely. And hospitalizations is one way to tell how we're doing, but it's sort of a blunt instrument. And I'll tell you a few other things we're doing, including testing or over and above testing, to give us a better idea of how the state is doing, how we're bending the curve, and where we can start up. And first of all, I'd just like to tell you about howwefeel.org. How We Feel is created by an amazing MIT neuroscience engineer and a number of people in epidemiology and infectious diseases. And we're going to you'll be able to meet him in just a few minutes. But right now with How We Feel, it's spread virally around the country in a computer science way, not an epidemic way. And what they've done is they're able to test different symptoms. You self-report on a voluntary basis symptoms, everything from cough, fever, and the such. You get that posted. We have thousands of people here in the state of Connecticut using the howwefeel.org app right now. And I'd like to say that we're the first state to officially sanction How We Feel as an official partnership. How We Feel is going to take information from all over the state. If more and more of you sign up for this app, it takes just a few minutes to put in your basic symptoms. And in turn, the leaders there, epidemiological, at How We Feel, will report back to the Department of Public Health here in our state and give us the best information they have in terms of what they see from these early symptoms going forward. More on that in a minute. Next, after the How We Feel app, we're doing a lot with thermometers. We've just got our first 3,500 smart thermometers. They're Bluetooth enabled. You take the temperature of yourself and your family in the morning and in the evening. That in turn connects to your phone. That goes up to the cloud. So along with How We Feel, we're going to have a temperature map of what's going on in the state of Connecticut. We'll see where those symptoms maybe are moving a little bit. Maybe they're followed by fevers in a more official way. Tells us where the next potential hotspot should be or can be. I mean, right now we know that just through infections and hospitalizations, New York is down and Fairfield County is down. Hartford is up. We know that Boston is up right now, so we worry about what's coming in from the east at this point. And we look around the rest of the country that Louisiana is down, or more particularly New Orleans, but Chicago is up. But within our state, there are respective hotspots, and How We Feel and our thermometers will allow us to test that. In addition, Josh has ordered tens of thousands of fever meters, a fever thermometer. And those are going to be incredibly helpful for us just to make sure that when you go into a manufacturing site, a Pratt & Whitney or Electric Boat or Sikorsky or any of the smaller manufacturing, anybody with a temperature more than 100.4, not allowed in. doing this what we can in order to better protect you. And over time, we may find that we can open up our stores and retail and big box retailers a lot faster and sooner and more safely if we have that fever meter just to test people on their way in and make sure you're not likely to be contagious. We had a good phone call today with Vice President Pence's task force. A lot of conversation about testing as well. You can imagine, some frustration from the governors that there's not more of the testing ingredients out there that you need. The White House is saying you got a lot of capacity there, but we've got the razors, but we don't have the razor blades, if you can follow my analogy. And there, we're working hard to make sure that we're able to do more of, in particular, the PCR testing that tells you whether you're infected or not. And one good thing is the federal government is getting out of the way, and they're loosening the regulations for us, allowing the states to be a little more entrepreneurial when it comes up to getting the swabs and it comes up with getting the reagents. And they've now said you can come up with your own swab and you can use cotton, American cotton if you want to, just like you have on a Q-tip. And opposed to some of the other liquids they use to transport, you can now use saline solution. Test that with Yale New Haven. Test that with UConn. Make sure it meets your protocols, but they're giving us a little more flexibility to be able to take the lead there. A final thought on testing. Well, I'll tell you, I thought I finally was able to figure out healthcare when the vice president was talking about, so this is going to be based upon IRR. And I said, as a business guy, great, an internal rate of return. No, IRR stands for the International Reagent Resources. They're the ones that's setting the standards by which a state like Connecticut would bring.
All right, you've been listening to Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont giving an update from his state. Fairly upbeat as things go, and certainly more upbeat than we've heard him over the last couple weeks, talking about the state of the virus in a couple different key counties for our listeners, for sure. Fairfield County probably being front and center, New Haven County as well.
All right. And let's just remind everybody how the market closed on this Monday, first trading day of the week, and we did see some selling, pretty broad-based selling. Dow Jones Industrial Average down about 2.4%, 592 points to the downside. S&P 500 a decline of about 1.8%, down 51 points. The NASDAQ, some of those tech names kept the NASDAQ doing a little bit better, but still down about 1% for the day overall, down about 89 points, Jason. So, we're off and running. We're going to get a lot of earnings news, and we're going to hear from a lot of big players, including like we just heard from IBM. We'll break down that report a little bit later on, but that will give us some idea of what companies are seeing about where we are in this process and what's on the other side.
Well, and what companies are seeing and saying and deciding is going to rest largely on the medical side of this. We have been very, very fortunate over the past few weeks to interview a number of people, have conversations with a number of folks at the Providence St. Joseph Health System. Dr. Rod Hochman is the president and CEO of that system. He joins us on the phone from Seattle. Dr. Hochman, really nice to have you here with Carol and myself.
Great to be with you.
And can we just say your team is incredible.
Amazing.
Jason said it right off the top. I mean, they have really, from the get-go, when we were still working in our offices, we were talking to your team, and they really helped kind of set the stage, made us have a much clearer understanding of what you guys were dealing with and what, now we all know would eventually, move to some of the hot spots around the country. So we thank you for that and really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
So help us understand where we are, because, one of the benefits of you guys being on the front lines as you were, and as Carol said, unfortunately, as it has moved eastward in many ways, is we're learning a lot from talking to you and your team. Give us a reality check, because this is a virus that knows no borders. This is also a virus that is not moving in any really predictable way, at least in terms of kind of where it keeps popping up. What's the reality check here for us, Dr. Hochman?
Sure. So the thing that we were lucky enough, I guess, is we had the first case January 21st in Washington State. And that put us on the alarm, because we knew once we had that case, this was going to spread. And of course, we had the Kirkland nursing home, and then more and more. What I think people have to understand, I'm also an immunologist by training. That was my degree. So this virus has been out and around, and it's not like it just pops up somewhere. So what we're finding out, a lot of asymptomatic cases, relatively mild cases. So what we really think, it's not like this thing is just kind of spreading from one town to the next, that in a lot of cases it's there. And then what happens, a group of people get together, or it breaks out in a nursing home, and then you have a flare, and it's up. So a lot of us believe a lot of this has been out and around us for a lot longer than we really believe it to be. The good news for us is that we've been at it longer, and we've stayed pretty hard on social distancing. So we're really starting to see we're starting to see the real decrease in the number of cases. Things are opening up, and actually some of our hospitals are half empty because we stopped a lot of elective surgery and whatnot. And we're actually trying to think, how do we turn this back on carefully, and what do we do next? So what you're going to see around the rest of the country are these, what people would say are what seem like outbreaks, but they're going to be flares in cases that are there. And it takes a while before you get on top of it. And I'd say in New York, they were a little later on getting on top of it, and particularly in densely populated areas. It has a tendency, obviously, to spread a lot easier than it does in less dense settings.
So we want to ask you, Dr. Hochman, what does coming out of this look like? And I know there's a bunch of steps, and we'll get into that, but what does coming out of this look like in your view?
It's going to look, so like people talk about waves after, what's the second wave look like? I think it's more akin to ripples that we're going to see. So we're going to have to live with this virus as long, I hate to say it, until we have a vaccine, but I think we can get into a better relationship with it and be able to manage and control it better. Obviously, as more people in the community have been exposed, have some level of immunity, we get better at testing, and then you bring things back. But we're going to have, and we should expect in places like Washington or California or other places, that there'll be these little ripples that occur where there'll be some cases that break out. We've got to, that's where the isolation, getting on top of it early really makes sense. But we'll have that, and we're going to have to live with that, I have to say, through the end of the year. Now, is it compatible? We live in a real tech community, so Boeing, Amazon, Microsoft, we're all talking about how to get people back to work and be able to do that safely. And we think we can gradually open that up, but we're not going to see the end of the COVID-19, but it'll be easier to control it, easier to diagnose it.
And how much do we worry about, or how should we be thinking, Dr. Hochman, and obviously a lot of this is unknowable, but just our day-to-day lives once it gets back to some measure of normal in that period where we don't have a vaccine, where isolation has to happen, what does sort of day-to-day social distancing look like if we're actually out in the world? It's one thing to sort of essentially be in your house, be with your family, but if you're going to work, if you're doing certain things, what's the responsible way that we should think about living?
So let's say you have a business that has 100 people in an office, or you've got a construction site. Those are relatively self-contained, so you're pretty much with that group of people for the day, and then you come home. Those are a little easier. In a perfect world, what you'd love to do is be able to COVID test everyone before they go back to work, know that they're all COVID-19 negative. And those are actually pretty controlled settings. So office setting or a newsroom setting or a construction site, those get there. Then some of the trickier ones tend to be places where there's a lot of contact with the public. But let's face it, today our grocery stores are open. We're able to manage that. So some of those things that we're doing with masking and some distance between people, not getting a big crowd of folks together, will be the way we manage it. So if you ask me, when's the next time we're going to get 300 people together in an auditorium, I don't see that happening for a real long while. That's not going to happen. But people in a work setting where they can kind of keep reasonable hygiene distance, potentially masking, construction sites, and retail, particularly small retail, starting to get small retail back where, you just use common sense in terms of how you do it. And I think we have to be more ubiquitous with masking. That'll be part of what we're going to deal with, because it's not going to stop it, but it'll keep it controlled.
Right. We're going to continue talking with Dr. Rod Hochman. He's President and CEO of Providence Health, joining us on the phone from Seattle, Washington. He's an immunologist, and just so thoughtful with this conversation. We'll continue, because I think I know the answer if I ask him about sporting events, when he just said, don't expect to see those large group gatherings for a long time.
I want to hear about the future of hospitals and medicine and going to the doctor, too, because I think that's a huge question that I know he's talked about. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Crude oil futures took a trip through the looking glass into negative territory. What we refer to as oil prices are the prices of contracts that are traded. They settled at the end of that trading session at negative $37.63 a barrel. That helped send the stock averages lower by 1 to 2.5%. The Dow falling 592 points. The Nasdaq 89, the S&P 51. For oil, the issue is no demand and so much supply we're in danger of running out of places to store it all. Small businesses waiting for government help have turned to lawyers now. They're suing Wells Fargo, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase, and U.S. Bancorp. The small businesses accusing the big banks of giving large loans top priority because they generate the highest fees. And soon the trouble finding toilet paper in grocery stores could get worse. Supply cuts aimed at boosting the lumber market mean the wood chips required to make toilet paper are becoming more scarce. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners. What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Stay in touch with your loved ones with great phones at great prices from Tesco Mobile. Like the incredible iPhone 7 with advanced HD front camera. Perfect for video calling. For just $13.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 14th of June. Was £15.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. That's right. They can help save lives by simply washing their hands. Just 20 seconds of thorough hand washing after they've coughed or sneezed or been outside can help fight against the dastardly spread of germs. Armed with only soap and water and hands, your superhero can protect you, your family, and everyone out there in America land. Amazing! Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
Be part of the college sports conversation on TuneIn. Hear the latest storylines around SEC football with the Paul Feinbaum Show.
I distinctly remember when you were hired, and I must say most of us thought you were out of your mind, giving up. I wouldn't call it a cush job because you were traveling across the country.
Get your college hoops fix with college basketball talk on NBC Sports.
Headed by Shabazz Napier, that also included Amita Brima, who is in and around the NBA ranks right now, and DeAndre Daniels, who was the 37th pick in the 2014 NBA draft. So my question to you is...
Or listen to the daily news from around the wide world of college football with College Football Live.
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team. And I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, it may be recency bias, having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football.
Discover these and more college sports podcasts right here on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you.
The best sports story all day, 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
ESPN Daily.
Search ESPN Daily to listen.
I'm Mel Kiper Jr., and to get you ready for the NFL Draft, you can listen to my podcast, First Draft, as Todd McShay, Chris Sproul, and I highlight all the top picks and give you the analysis you need leading up to the draft. Just search ESPN Radio today.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Rod Huckman. He is the CEO of Providence St. Joseph Health out in the state of Washington. First, let's get back to Charlie Pellet for some headlines. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Jason Kelly. After the bell, we did hear from IBM. It reported a drop in first quarter revenue, also pulling its profit forecast for the year, signaling that the COVID-19 pandemic has become another hurdle for the company in its transition to cloud computing. Unusual times, negative oil prices today. We saw a plunge in West Texas Intermediate crude. That was the May contract. Equifax, Experian, TransUnion all offering free weekly credit reports. And the Senate plans to meet tomorrow for a potential vote on an emergency stimulus package of as much as $500 billion, as Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says all sides are continuing talks on the measure. Now, what about markets and coronavirus? Paul Richards is president of Medley Global Advisors.
What I think happens now is we do a lot of work around here while at the same time getting back to what the core issue is, and that is resolving what is the medical outlook. And this is the difference. You know, this isn't a debt problem. This is not a terrorism problem. This is a medical issue. So I think markets, having retraced 50%, now see a lot of volatility. Now you see more focus on oil. You see the focus this week on the Euro summit.
S&P 500 index down 51, a drop of 1.8%. The Dow down 592, down 2.4%. NASDAQ down 89, a drop there of 1%. 10-year yield 0.61%. Gold up 0.8%. Peloton Interactive shares lower today after getting its first sell equivalent rating since the September 29 IPO. Stock cut to underperform from market perform at BMO Capital Markets. Peloton lower today by 7.2%. Wayfair shares rallied today after Great Hill Investors reported a 6% stake in the online merchant. Shares of Wayfair based in Boston up today by 12%. Again, recapping equities lower. S&P down 51, down 1.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thanks so much for the update. Right now, our guest, Dr. Rod Huckman, he is President and Chief Executive Officer at Providence St. Joseph Health, on the phone from Seattle, Washington. As you know from our loyal listeners, this hospital is part of a massive St. Joseph Health system. It's about a $25 billion system. It's 51 hospitals, 7 states, 800 clinics, 115,000 caregivers. So it's massive. Dr. Huckman, so we were talking about kind of life after the virus, and you said you don't see large groups gathering for a long time. 2 questions. What's a long time? And so things like sports, concerts, kids going to college, pick your thing, commuting. Like, how do we, what are the events we can do? What are the events we can't? You talked about office settings probably work, but I'd love more specifics you're thinking, because it's a really informed thinking.
Sure. So I've had a whole bunch of university presidents call me and say, okay, can we get my kids back in September? And if we do, how do we do it? So we had good discussions about that. But I said, if you can get the kids back, which I think you can, you'd preferably love to test them before they come back to campus and have as much information knowing that they're healthy coming back. And then you're not going to have a lecture hall with 300 people in it, but you could have smaller classrooms with some spread and probably do learning that's a combination of virtual and in-place learning. So kind of mapping that out and making sure you can do it. So I think there's really some hope for universities because you can manage the population, manage the setting. I think in terms of large gatherings, concerts, a lot of folks that have theaters in Seattle have said, when can we get back to what we're doing? It's just going to be hard to see unless we have a better control on what this looks like, getting 250 or 300 people in the same room. So for sporting events, I kind of think we're all going to learn to love golf a lot. And the question is whether you can do some pro sports, maybe without a large crowd. That's controlled, but at least you can watch it on TV. So that's some of the ways of thinking in terms of that. The good news is that every week that goes by, we learn more. So Alaska's really opening up. We're going to start opening up, and I think we'll learn a lot by what happens. So every week or month that goes by, we'll get smarter about it and be able to kind of refine some of those predictions that are out there. But right now, if you ask me, that'd be my off the top quick analysis.
Did you say so? I'm sorry, forgive me. Did you give us a time frame for when we can kind of get back to normal large groups? Is that a year away?
Well, I think when you're talking large groups, like seeing in our place the Seahawks or the Mariners are doing that, I got to believe that we're not going to feel comfortable with that till we have a vaccine.
Yeah.
And then the question on the vaccine, and, there's so much noise out there. I kind of laugh when I hear it. There's at least 15 different companies working on vaccines. And part of it's working on, there's some newer vaccine technology that uses messenger RNA that might give us a vaccine faster than some of the others. But we're going to see how that is because we've got to get better at getting vaccine therapy faster than saying a year and a half. So that's what I'm looking towards. The best estimates are December, January, and then you'd start by vaccinating your caregivers and, kind of roll it out from there. Right. But that's probably conventional wisdom right now.
So, Dr. Hochman, I have a fairly simple question that opens up a larger discussion, and unfortunately we only have about a minute and a half, which is, should I go for my annual checkup? Like, what should I be doing at this point when it comes to normal health care?
Well, you got to know what's on the list. And this is what really has us worried, that a lot of healthcare is being put off. We've seen about half the number of strokes and heart attacks that we saw last year. We don't know that all of a sudden the whole country's gotten really healthy. Yeah. That's not it. So we think a lot of people are putting things off. So I would look down the list of what, if you're being treated for a chronic condition, some of it, we've been doing 13,000 virtual visits a day with our patients. So it's also a good way to see if that's available. So at least you could do a virtual visit, check in with your practitioner, and then see, what kind of testing you need or something that be put off. But I would check in and see if you can at least do a virtual visit for starters.
Interesting. How worried are you, now only have about 30 seconds, how worried are you that, you're going to have some real disruption in your business financially over the next year or so?
I wish it was next year. I'm looking at the May financials, what it looks like. So I'm the chair of the American Hospital Association, so we're just on a call today with folks around the country. We're really concerned about the hit the whole healthcare system is going to take, even with some of the money that's coming from D.C. So that's going to be a story that we're going to see evolve over the next couple of months. But I'm worried particularly about smaller hospitals, rural hospitals, but even large systems.
All right. Well, we look forward to continuing the conversation. And as Carol said at the beginning of our chat, just really appreciate you and your team. You guys have just done an unbelievable job amid obviously a lot of stresses and strains of helping keep us and our audience really honest about this. Dr. Rod Hochman, he's the boss out at Providence St. Joseph Health. Let's get to San Francisco now. Ed Baxter's there. Hey, Ed.
Hi, Jason. Is it an emerging trend? There's a real interesting set of numbers coming out today. While cases continue to rise in the U.S., the rise is not as steep. These are the latest numbers. Cases rise 2.7%. Latest data checking below the 4.5% average of the past week. So much better trend. The